All right. Does everyone hear me? Can I get a thumbs up? Do you, Surf, am I coming in?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. It's working now. You know, spaces are the buggiest damn thing. It seems like it's like I'll be listening on headphones, Bluetooth, and I'll be led into a space and then it will like switch to my phone and then someone new will come up and when they start speaking, I don't hear them. It's just extremely buggy. Um, well, I think that Joe Biden will lose. And so I'm going out on a limb on this one, and I'm willing to sign my name on it. Now, I've been wrong before, many other people have, but I think the question with predictions is, are you telling us something? Are you deriving this prediction rationally? Are you being insightful? Or are you just kind of taking a shot in the dark or going with the flow or something like that? Um, I might be wrong about this, but I don't think my reasoning is invalid. So let me start spinning this and then we can talk about it. So, I, as you might know, voted for Joe Biden in 2020. I voted for him proudly. I don't regret that vote. I think there was a lot about the Biden administration that was admirable. And if someone ever asked me what I thought about it, I would say pretty good. Um, there's a lot of domestic policy, the CHIP Act, uh, desire for, uh, at least desire for infrastructure reform. Many people have noted this that Biden, in a way, took the idea of Make America Great Again, that was a mumbled, garbled nonsense from Trump, and turned it into actual policy. I would even defend broadband internet in the hinterlands. I would defend a lot of it. I would defend the Afghan withdrawal. Uh, might very well have been terrible in a way, but I don't think any sort of extraction from a 20-year long disaster would be good. And after all, that was Trump's policy, and Biden stuck with it. He went against all of the wisdom of Washington, D.C. journalists, and he did it. So I would defend that. I would defend so much more. Ukraine, I think, was a really serious question of will and nerve. And I have some serious criticisms of Biden. However, I am glad that he was in office. And, you don't really know what the Republican policy on something like Ukraine would be, or the policy of a president, because there's this tendency, particularly in this polarized age, for everything to become polemical, and what the guy in office is doing is absolutely the wrong thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know how Trump would react to it, but I overall am glad that Biden reacted in the way that he did. And I do think that there's a lack of vision, a lack of the why are we doing this, a lack of a long term thinking and plan. And I also will admit that Ukraine is struggling right now, but those are, let's say, a loyal opposition to Biden. Those are legitimate criticisms, but constructive criticisms. They aren't the criticisms of the conservative movement where, he's the worst president in history, or et cetera, et cetera. So I there's a lot to recommend Joe Biden. He was a kind of back to normalcy candidate. As I have noted, the establishment feared the rise of white nationalism, and in response, they elected a really, really old white man. It was a, a bold strategy that just might work. And we got this guy from yesteryear, a guy who most thought his career to be over. And again, I would stress that he was actually pretty good. And I really mean that. So I don't say this as a Biden hater, but I do think things are turning against Biden. And I think he's going to lose, not because of my opposition. And I think he's going to lose due to left wing opposition. That is Democratic voter demoralization. And that is a huge thing that cannot be underestimated. In 2020, I think that affected Donald Trump to a large degree. Now, he did, I won more votes than any sitting president in our history. That is true. Gosh, my throat immediately becomes scratchy with every Trump impression. That is true. There were actually some serious pockets of demoralization, the so-called 5% of white voters in the Midwest who were key to his electoral college victory in 2016, who pulled out. And that was a serious issue for him. I think he likely lost a lot of older voters also due to not so much his policies on COVID, but just the madness that he was promoting, or the madness promoted by all of his supporters, which he, of course, did not reject. So demoralization really matters. And I think there is a diminishing returns when it comes to moralizing your voters over the threat of fascism. You can only pull that once or twice. And at some point, it's just like, well, you told us this the last time, that, democracy itself was at stake. And are you just going to keep telling me this? It just wears people down. They're diminishing returns. I think they're diminishing returns with the abortion issue. Offer a vision that is compelling. Don't just keep talking about Roe v. Wade. And secondly, what Roe v. Wade did is to put it to the states. Now, there could very well be a national agenda on abortion. And Mike Pence wants that, Lindsey Graham wants that, et cetera. Trump notably doesn't want that, at least if we believe his public statements, which are characteristically garbled. But unless you're fighting against that, it's just, again, diminishing returns when it comes to bringing out voters. But what I think is really going to demoralize Joe Biden is the Israel issue. And I think it derives in so many ways from Joe Biden's age. These are people for whom the Second World War and the Holocaust and everything around that, and including the establishment of Israel in 1948, they have a mythic-like quality. And, not that American policy was always pro-Israel, but it's at this point, particularly as they get older, they, in effect, can do no wrong. They are the ultimate victim in the victimhood Olympics, and to go against them, to really question them, is just unthinkable. That is not the case for millions of young people in general, and it's not the case for millions of Democratic voters. And, we can talk about Israel a little bit on the space. It's not, I don't really want to get into the nitty gritty of it. But the major issue is that in the eyes of myself and most other people, what we are seeing is not a desperate attempt to stop terrorism. What we are seeing is a full-on ethnic cleansing of Gaza that will result in at least a short-term occupation. It will result in at least the deaths of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, and might very well result in the annexation of Gaza and the displacement of the Palestinian people. And who knows, it might very well result in a regional war. I don't think some people have been saying, response to me, oh, people will forget about this by Christmas. And I don't buy that at all. I think this is going to be a long, protracted issue. Biden, there is a huge degree of separation between his voters on this. And this isn't just some issue. This isn't student loan relief. This isn't some tax thing. This isn't even higher gas prices. This is a major global ideological, emotional issue. And they don't want to vote for Genocide Joe. And I can't really bring myself to, make dark Brandon jokes or, Ray-Ban aviator jokes anymore. It is extremely demoralizing to see this. It's extremely demoralizing to see Joe Biden retreat into Cold War, and excuse me, not Cold War. Cold War would be good. In the words of Judi Dench, God, I miss the Cold War. But to retreat into terror war, George W. Bush era talking points, thinking, commitments, etc. I don't like it, and I think I'm actually fairly representative of millions of people who don't like it. Now, they might very well dislike Trump passionately. You can absolutely, rationally, convincingly argue that Trump on these issues would be worse. You could also maybe wishfully think that Trump might pull a rabbit out of a hat or be different. That's, possible. I mean, he is, after all, crazy. But the issue is motivation, moralization, and there seems to be another aspect of this of voters can get vindictive. And if they want to punish you, if they wish you the worst, if they think you are in effect a war criminal, they're gonna be in a different headspace when they go to the voting booth, or more likely when they don't go to the voting booth. And this is what I see. He has low approval rating, although that could be chalked up to polarization. That could be explained away as, there are a lot of people who don't like the fact that he failed on student loans or whatever, but they're going to vote for him anyway. There are a lot of people you could say, oh, Trump is such a specter of evil that they're going to vote for him. Some of those lines are fair, but this is going to be a close election, at least on the electoral college level. He is quite old. He is increasingly out of touch. And my sense is that he is going to lose. Replacing Joe is possible at this stage, but I don't think the DNC is really willing to replace Joe's policies. I mean, you could argue that, look, I think Kamala Harris would be a much worse candidate, but you could argue that maybe Gavin Newsom, goddamn, he's handsome. He would be a better candidate. Maybe, but even Gavin Newsom, I don't think could really turn this train around. So I'm basically making an argument of demoralization of your own base of support and a get out the vote issue that leads to a remarkable re-election, I guess you could say, of Donald Trump, similar to what we saw in 2016. Although I think this one's going to be worse. Hillary Clinton was out of office, even out of the Obama administration, and she was, when you've been sitting on the sidelines for a little bit, there's a little bit of potentiality. Maybe she could have changed. Maybe she would do this differently, etc. Joe's in office, and he is overseeing a catastrophe in the eyes of the world, and I think he's going to lose. The other thing about Trump is that there is a lot of fuck you energy with Trump. I see a lot of the fuck you energy from 2016. What do I mean by that? I am referring to basically Michael Moore's famous monologue of 2016, which is that, there's one day a year when everyone is equal. when the billionaire and the homeless person have the same amount of power, and that is election day. And, I don't know what I think about Donald Trump. I might not even like Donald Trump, but I know that the guy who fired me hates Donald Trump. I know that the media personality who demeaned me hates Donald Trump. And so I'm going to complete the biggest fuck you ever by electing Donald Trump. I see a lot of that energy. Donald Trump as a phenomenon cannot be defeated through the legal system. He cannot be defeated through civil trials. He cannot even be defeated through a criminal trial. He cannot be defeated through a criminal conviction because it is a political, ideological, and in some crazy way, religious movement. And I'm not, to be honest, really a part of that ideological or religious movement. But I recognize that it exists and that it is real. They're going to try to nickel and dime him, in effect, death by 1,000 cuts. It's not going to work. The ideological fervor of fuck you will overwhelm a bunch of lawyers, however justified they are in prosecuting him. And not in all of those cases. Some of those cases I could not care less about. But some of them actually, they seem quite justified, in fact. But it just doesn't matter. You're using legal technicalities, in effect, a process, and you're not going after him mano a mano, defeating him definitively politically. And being that they're not willing to do that, Donald Trump can win, and he can win on the basis of a kind of crazed Dionysian energy combined with a demoralized, depressed voting base on the left. So that's my argument. I will let some other people up. Surf. I'm going to try to get Chuck Johnson in this. Chuck Johnson called me out on Twitter. I sent him this, but willing to hash it out. Chuck Johnson has kind of descended into a little bit of blue anon, I have to say. Trust the plan. Okay. So I see some of my critics are on, and they're in the speakers. So that is good. We can hash it out respectfully. Excuse me. Okay, Zag, go for it.
Oh, Richard,
How's it going,
say
Richard? Yeah, I saw that. This is interesting because I too sort of have a close friend who's very blue anon, like Charles, who works as a federal contractor, and is like, why are you guys so anti-American now? Like, what's going on? Donald Trump is an absolute antichrist. Are you kidding? Do you really want him back? And completely under the impression that he is going to prison and that he will not be running. He will not be the nominee. He won't be the nominee. They keep insisting on it.
I don't think he's actually going to prison.
No, I agree with you. I think
he could win. He could win an election from a prison cell. I mean, he could run the country from a prison cell. But I just don't think they're going to do that. And even though it is a state charge, I think the Georgia thing will just be taken away. There's the power of the office. We're not all like equal under the law. I'm sorry. Even in the Mueller investigation, they were like, well, we don't want to indict or convict a sitting president. You can impeach him, but that is a really dramatic and divisive move. It's not the, calling for a vote of no confidence or something. It's a kind of chopping the head off the king is what it's closer to. So, yeah. And I don't think they'll find some reason to not actually go through the spectacle of putting him in an orange jumpsuit. I mean, they'll just find a justification. But go on.
Yeah, Richard, I was interested to see that he's won a couple. He won the little push. He filed a grievance about the gag order. He won that. And I think he had another little victory in Colorado where they said you can't remove him from the ballot, like that's
Right.
unconstitutional. So like I think based off of that, like it's going to be very difficult. Of course, they're trying him in New York and Fulton County, and those are very sort of purple, if not very blue areas with New York. So there could be some issues there. But I think in New York he'll strike up a plea deal to avoid a public display and a humiliation of a jury of his New York peers finding him guilty. But I think they're going to go to trial in Georgia, Richard. Everything points to
Yes.
that. A very aggressive prosecutor there who wants justice, quote unquote. So I think he'll have to go to trial there. And he may, that may benefit him because all the cards will be laid out on the table. And I still don't know if you can say Trump knew what he was doing was wrong and did it anyway. That's going to be difficult to prove.
Yeah. At the very least, you can say it's going to be the best campaign stop you could ever imagine. I mean, everyone's going to be hanging on every word. Hasn't it been moved to August or something?
I think it was pushed to August, yeah.
Yeah. So this is just going to lead directly up to the election.
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
that's
the jury might be,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is going to be wild, but it's going to be wild. Everyone's going to be talking about him. It's going to be OJ times 10. I mean, times 1,000. I mean, it's just incredible. It's not like the lawsuit with regular people where it kind of puts you out of commission for a little while. It's the total reverse. It's going to be the most powerful campaign of all time. I mean, they won't have to host rallies. They won't have to do anything. Everyone, billions of dollars of free publicity.
And Richard, of course, will hear they're coming for me. I'm the only thing that stands in the way of them coming for you. That's what's
Yeah.
next. So vote for me, and we will end this tyranny. That's going to be very
Yes.
compelling. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we know the trial dates for the Jack Smith stuff?
I'd have to look that up. I can take a look and see if they've released that. But I think some of those are starting fairly soon.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go take a look though. Hold on.
Yeah. I think I heard like Super Tuesday or something. Okay, Perchucci Gelche.
It's just Georgia. It's fine. I just changed
Okay.
my name.
George.
Georgia. You can go to somebody else. I had a thought, but I lost it.
Okay.
Can I jump in here,
I
Richard?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to put forward, assuming Trump wins, that this 4-year sabbatical would be actually a really good thing for his administration, in that he'd be a lot more reactionary given all these lawsuits, given the border crisis. Seems like he would have a lot more initiative. It seemed like in 2020 he kind of lost the plot.
Yeah.
So what's your take on Trump coming back with a vengeance kind of deal?
Well, I think that's definitely true. I mean, I think you've probably seen some of this stuff like what was it, Agenda 47, which is supposedly this like 1,000-page document of policies they're going to enact. The Heritage Foundation's working overtime on it. There was a report that came out recently about this vetting of people to appoint to various positions in the bureaucracies and agencies. And it's very interesting. I mean, one of the things, and I think this was a bit of a cope or a myth, you could say, about Trump in 2017. It's like, oh, he lost the transition. He wasn't putting all these people in who were solid, and he was getting undermined. Now he definitely was getting undermined from people within. I mean, that goofy Pence aide or whatever wrote a book on it. But I think it was a kind of cope in the way that the conservatives didn't really have an agenda outside of end Obamacare and reduce taxes or something, and so that's what he did. But they seem to have something now, and I think there's going to be a lot of vengeance. I mean, I was joking about this on another space. There's a whole class of people, and I guess you could call them a kind of surplus elite. Like, they're not in Washington, D.C., they're not in government right now. And they are more rough around the edges, you could say, but they're not necessarily less intelligent than the people currently staffing the bureaucracy. They're more uncouth, but not less competent. And there are like thousands of lawyers who could go in with a wrecking ball to all of these agencies, et cetera, if appointed. So it's a real thing. Now, you want to. There's this one guy who I think Bannon said, "Oh, he's going to be the next attorney general." Whatever. I've seen some of his stuff on Twitter. I can't remember his name at the moment, but it's like, yeah, we're doing it. Prosecute the Biden family in its entirety. Kids in cages. It's going to be glorious. Just this really reactionary stuff. But you can do a lot when you're in charge, and these guys again have the power of belief. They have the power of revenge behind them in a way that the liberals don't.
Yeah, the trial dates are set between March and May, and it looks like Trump was successfully able to postpone one of them for 4 months because I think Florida was set to start early, and he got that pushed back. So March to May is when these will start. So yeah, basically, it was supposed to be Super Tuesday around then, but he got it pushed back. So I think it's all going to be a crazy summer, Richard. Next spring and summer is going to be a wild ride.
Absolutely wild. Okay, so George, have you remembered what you wanted to talk about?
I was gonna say that the mezzanine elites like JD Vance. I know what you're talking about, like the JD Vance types, the people that are like, oh, I got on my bootstrap and I went to like Dartmouth or a second tier college or something like that. But I'm a little bit confused with how they're going to prosecute Biden per se. I think it's just gonna be one of those like very public things that's gonna take hold for the first 2 years of his presidency and eventually fizzle out because there's really, outside of Hunter going to jail, which might happen, but like
no, they're just gonna drive him crazy. I mean, they're just gonna be total assholes. Is what they're planning on doing.
It's just like basically like a legal war of attrition between them. And here's the thing, like eventually I do think that it's not that Trump is stupid, but he doesn't really get procedural things about like, oh, these are classified documents, blah blah blah, because he didn't really grow up in that legalistic like environment in the same way that he was a millionaire. He was a comedian. He loves to entertain. So at the base of him, like if he has classified documents, he's going to show his audience, and I think that's going to be his. I think probably the Florida trial is probably the most grave out of all of these, given just how harsh our sort of like law has become, especially after the Patriot Act about like classified information, so on and so forth. So I think that's going to be probably the most important trial. I don't see Georgia being that big, but I do think that like there might be a push for scapegoats in Georgia, like this person did whatever, and they might be detained or whatever.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of people in Georgia have already flipped, so there's that. Okay. Yukima 9, Suki.
Oh man, sorry. I just had to. Thanks, it's Zuki. Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me speak. And I'm just like in an argument right now with with this guy. But anyway, over what's going on in Argentina, which is very funny.
Yeah.
And then the recent flag he waved. But I'd say it's really interesting because I'm actually kind of glad you're even saying it, or not that. You're a great predictor of things, but it's just really funny because there has to
excuse me, Sukima, I have correctly predicted Trump's election and Biden's.
I know. And I'd say, okay, you have a good record, and I'm just more. Okay. I'll admit you have a very good record. Well, but other choices. But like, here's the thing. The problem is, I think the main problem is just like the institutional the sort of like on the ground election polling and stuff like that. Because I am a believer that there's some shenanigans that went on in the polls that you know in 2020, so that I think it will be attempted again in 2024.
Oh, you dropped out,
and I always thought that I thought like Trump had the. Wait, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, I think I dropped off for a moment there.
Okay, so I always thought like Trump had it in the bag in 2020. I thought like he's gonna win again. Like that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wake up and Biden wins. So, but I'm not. You see, that's the thing I'm kind of worried about. I don't know. We can disagree. You can call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever. It's just that people still need to understand. A lot of these traditional like institutions, involved in our electorate, involved in like on the ground activism. It's dominated by leftists or liberals, and like you have to like these people are true believers. They, what I mean. Like the political right is like unfortunately oftentimes it's spectacle. We're more into like being on Twitter, more into doing this shit than sitting through a city council meeting or just like on the ground stuff. Like how many do you think like in election polls? I mean, I wouldn't say I'm speaking from somebody who lives in Southern California, but it's just I'm assuming most of the people that are like vote counters or doing stuff on election night, they're probably left wing and left leaning. They actually have a sense of civic duty, so to speak. Like even though we call it like we look at certain other people as with like as left wingers as being just as
they're kind of like granola white people.
Yeah. So, but we'll see how things go. I don't think it's a guarantee Trump will win. I want Trump to win. I don't want I don't want DeSantis to win. I want Trump to win the primary as well. I just wrote Republican down the ticket, and I mean that's what I just do now. I should just be doing more, and I'm not, and I don't. But that's just an interesting thing. But as for your take on like the Democratic Party, I would say it's just not. I think the voting, like the not the voting, but the donor base of the Democratic Party, will still support like Israel. But one thing you should notice is that I would feel that Democratic, like the Zionist Democrat donor base has actually always been a lot smarter than the Zionist Republican donor base, because the thing is like the Zionist Democratic donor base, they always did things quietly. They always kind of give out the cheap rhetoric, like talking point wise about Israel's right to exist, and okay, so we're just going to pass these weapons bills or like reject the UN condemnation stuff. So they always do that, like in actions and political maneuvering. They do it quietly. When you on the flip side, the Republicans are always like Israel first. It becomes gross. Like how Republicans act towards Israel very openly, and I think maybe the best way is just that both parties just come, even though technically Israel policy is almost bipartisan, pro-Israel policy is almost bipartisan, they should just make it non-partisan and just kind of quiet that shit down. That's kind of the recent thing. Although I don't know how that's going to change up how either I guess Jewish status and Jewish money that goes into certain things is going to really change.
Are you Jewish?
No, I'm not. I hang out with a lot of Jews, but I'm not actually technically I am Asian, and if anyone asks specifically, I am 300 pounds and Japanese. So
you're a sumo wrestler.
Yes. Oh, I mean, I'm trying to eat my way into a sumo school.
I see. Interesting. I don't know why you care about this so much. You're like, we need to be quieter about it. I mean, it's a very odd thing to say, to be honest.
No, because I see the tides changing demographically of like, because the boomers are going to die off anyway. So
Yeah.
strategically, Republicans should really just tone down the Israel first shit. Like, I just say this as a perspective. If I were Jewish, I would just want Nikki Haley to shut up and like not treat America not treat like Israel as like America first or something like that, or
Right.
Israel first and stuff like that. It's like kind of cringe and like kind of obvious. Like, and I say this as a Gentile, just looking at her, like, you know, wow, she's like all these like a lot of these Republicans have this sort of Israel first, you know, sentiment, or at least just outspoken sentiment. It's just like, man, do they really just need to like? They always just want to say this kind of stuff for, you know, like Zionist donations, and obviously the answer is yes, but like it's just not. I wish they'd tone it down, and even if I was Jewish, I wouldn't.
So
you
wish that they would tone it down so that the general public wouldn't know what they were doing, and they could, in a sinister and undemocratic fashion, continue to.
I think
I'm really
Israel is
wondering
here
what is
to
up
stay.
with that. You know,
Well,
no.
okay.
But the thing was, the Democrats have always done this. They're actually always been smarter about it.
Well, I know, but
they
why
give the
do
lip service
you
of
support
like
it
the
is the question.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I think Israel is always going to exist as a military outpost. I think there's just, even if you try to contort it to, we shouldn't send like this much billions of aid. Really, 74% of the aid that's given to Israel is then put back into military companies with the U.S. So it's sort of like I can't remember the system, but it's one of those things that's just set in stone in the military complex, and that's one of the biggest exports of the U.S.
You seem to be, you know, continuing this notion that, you know, Israel is just this outpost of American power, and if Israel didn't exist, we would have to invent it, and this kind of stuff.
No,
I find this
not
hard to
necessarily. I would
buy.
say that America's always needed one or two intercessors within each region. It used to be at the beginning of this whole like ordeal. It used to be Egypt. Egypt was the socialist whatever under Nasser, and you know you remember all the ferries and Luxor and all of the so-called pseudo-British culture associated with it. It wasn't Israel initially, especially because of the Israel and the British infighting. But that's because of the Suez Canal. Like there just needs to be one power that is dedicated to the Westerners, in the same way that China is trying to find, or like Iran tries to find a stronghold. I just think that's geopolitics.
Well, does that, if I accept that notion, is there ever a point where an entity like that outlives its usefulness?
I see. Here's the thing. I don't necessarily think the entity itself, Israel, is outliving its own existence, but it does need a regime change, which is where I get really annoyed by some of the. Okay, I understand that Israel is, you know, an entity of itself, but it has complex politics within itself. So the Zionist left, which mirrors the pro-Zionist Democrats, do not like Netanyahu, and they have never liked him.
They were protesting him in the streets for 9 months. I mean, I agree
they
with
don't want, but here's the thing, they also have a red line where they do not want the destruction of Israel into like a one-state secular Palestine, which isn't going to really you know, help with security or whatever. I mean, when have the Arab elites ever been good at doing security with the peasantry who rebelled against the Jews like 7 times before 1948? So it's just not guaranteed, which is where like a very polarized population. So they have that red line. I think what's going to happen is Netanyahu is definitely going to be overthrown. The settlements will probably have to be stopped with like a real.
So you're suggesting there'll be a liberal Zionist rump Israel that comes out of this?
Yeah. Pretty much in the next few months, I would say.
I wouldn't bet on that either, but it's just interesting that like Israeli left wingers, I think, performed probably the longest. I mean, they didn't call it a ceasefire march, but it was like a march to negotiate with Hamas to like get those hostages out, and it went from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. it was like it's like the longest march, like in any place. I think like that's the epic irony of it. It's just that like the longest peace march kind of is just happened in Israel. And it's just kind of a weird thing because I think I think they're already kind of saying, maybe we're going to have a ceasefire again. I mean, it's never going to stop. I think the
I think
conflict will.
I think Jews are probably the most fragmented people on earth. I mean, if they weren't fragmented, then you wouldn't have Jesus, wouldn't you? Like, I think I understand, like, generally that there is a Zionist lobby there, but I
Yeah,
think
they're
there's
not
competing
fragmented on
Zionists.
key things. I mean, it's
Yeah,
the
they're
whole 3 Jews, 4 opinions or whatever. But I
Two
mean,
Jews, three opinions.
okay, fine. The key thing is that there is a unifying cause for Jews, which is the maintenance of the Torah. I mean, in the United States, you have 2 parties, 1 opinion, and that is the
Yeah,
Zionist opinion.
for
So,
Israel, but the thing is, like, for Israel because
yeah,
of the
I mean,
donor,
I'm
but
not talking about their opinions on Shakespeare or French cuisine. I'm sure they have 12,000 opinions. I'm talking about the opinions that matter. They're actually extremely unified in a way that other people's aren't. It's why they have
but
existed for so
I
long.
mean, if foreign, I mean, here's the thing though. If honestly, if foreign policy was dominant, like American foreign policy was simply all centered around Israel, like Marines would have already been in Iran already, and like overthrew the regime just to like have a pro-Israel, pro-American
Well, I
government.
agree.
Like,
I think people saying like a Zionist occupied government, I mean, there are strong limits to that. We don't, Bibi Netanyahu has been whining about Iran for well over 2 decades, and it hasn't happened. That's fair enough. But again, that's just because that is true, we shouldn't ignore the obvious Zionist hegemony in Washington D.C.
do you think? I'd say the biggest foreign subversive lobby, so to speak, would be the Chinese.
All
They're
right, we're
actually
doing
pretty similar.
whataboutism here. Okay, so I
But
object. Do you want to jump in?
you don't believe that.
I think
I don't even
Um,
necessarily disagree with you. You're just engaging in whataboutism to change the subject.
No,
Like, have I
no, but
told you about the Chinese?
I think
I think we
I think they're
Always
probably
blame
Now
the
listen,
Chinese.
listen up, Goy, and listen real hard.
All right, I object. You have the floor.
so yeah, no, I think
I object. All right, going once, going twice. Lisa Grande or Grand.
Richard, can you hear him? I just heard
can
him.
you not hear me?
Oh no. See, this is why I hate Twitter Spaces. Okay, I object. Why don't you drop down and then request again, and I'll let you back up? It's one of these crazy things where the wires get crossed, and I just can't hear you. So I'll go to Lisa Grand at this point.
It's Grande.
Grande, I got it right the
Yes.
first time. All
Yes,
right,
you did. Hey, Richard.
there you go.
Um,
Hi.
so you were talking about how a lot of the far left is not going to vote for Biden, and there's a lot of people on the right who I would think are impressed or should be grateful for the way that Biden is supporting Israel. But I was curious what you think about, because nobody on the right is going to vote for him. They're not going to take that into consideration and vote
Right.
for him. So I was wondering what you think about that, how it's kind of bizarre. And also if you had any, I don't know, any references of any other situations in past presidencies where something like this happened, where the vote got, was split like that, when a president did something that greatly benefited the party that he wasn't representing, and that he didn't get any of their votes. I don't know if you.
Well, I think an obvious analogy, to answer your second question first, an obvious analogy is LBJ. So LBJ was appointed after the assassination of JFK. He was wildly popular. He passed landmark legislation, the Great Society being most obvious. and he was elected in a runaway landslide against Goldwater in 1964. And he dropped out of the Democratic primaries. And that eventually led to Nixon in 1968. So I think that's, and there are, Nixon's voters weren't as crazy as contemporary MAGA people are, but there are some, a lot of that energy, we're the silent majority, we're going to take down the establishment. A lot of that energy was certainly there with Nixon in 1968. Although it's kind of funny, it would almost be like Mitt Romney deciding to run for president, but then running as MAGA. That would actually, as funny as that sounds, that's almost like what Nixon was. I mean, he was Eisenhower's vice president. He was a Rockefeller Republican. He's from California, although California had a different vibe at the time. But anyway, I think that's the real analogy. I mean, I've seen these weird things, and granted, these are entirely anecdotal, but I've seen some of these hardcore Zionists. Many of them are Jews, if not most of them are Jews. And I've heard, Michael Rappaport, this is totally anecdotal, but I think it's useful. He's just saying, like, look, I might vote for Pig Dick Trump, and saying all this kind of stuff. Now, is that a trend? I don't know, but it's this weird thing. And I've mentioned this before, where the most fervent anti-Semites and the most fervent Zionists vote for the same candidate. It's perhaps one of the most remarkable things in politics. So Nick Fuentes and David Duke will vote for Donald Trump. And so will Michael Rappaport and, Bibi Netanyahu's son or something. It's a very, very odd thing. And so, if anything, I think, and maybe it's not even rational, but I could see some of these people who are fervent Zionists but have voted, they're kind of centrist Dems, being like, well, I'm not sure I trust the Democratic Party anymore, and voting for Trump. I think that's quite likely, actually.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Right Honorable Reginald Somerset.
It's always great when you say my name fully. I recorded it last time. It was quite a good little clip.
Good. You can put that as a drop in your podcast or whatever.
Yeah, like a little stamp. Yeah. So you were speaking earlier on about Biden's sort of journey into a neoconism of the new axis of evil in order to pass this bill, and obviously, as it was to you, it was also to me a very sort of unsavory, just tawdry thing. Like, oh my God, we back here, because I was young at the time, but I was there, and it's just very, very tired, and I'm amazed that it's just that whole idea of things has been so unsuccessful and flopped so hard. And I'm just wondering, I don't believe Trump's going to win. That's just cards on the table moment. I think that when someone gets branded as a domestic terrorist, even though it's completely spurious, I just call me visionless. But I just don't see how someone walks into the White House after that. But I guess stranger things have happened, maybe. But so we see sort of a Biden who's hopelessly tied to whatever Israel does, moving into sort of these tired sclerotic neoconisms. What does that leave Trump open to take on a new, fresher narrative? And what is that narrative? What does Trump 2024 actually look like? Because from what I've seen so far, when the campaign was announced, there was a lot of like reheated 2016 meme cuts of Trump that just lacked the energy and the vitality of the original moment. Politically, is it just going to be, well, I was the first one to take anti-Semitism off our campuses and
No, no,
stuff
okay,
like that?
I
Or
see your question. No,
yeah,
so this is one thing I'll say about Trump. So he is politically inexperienced, and he shoots from the hip. The other thing I'd say about him is that he is a narcissist, and he doesn't like being told what to do. And a lot of these criticisms launched by Ron DeSantis have all fallen flat. And they're like, well, to be a leader, that means that it's not about you. It's about the movement altogether. And we're doing this like there's a kind of like identity crisis or a lack of identity for someone who's obviously a sociopath in the case of Ron DeSantis. But it's
hmm
it's like this taking on like I'm you'll see a lot of these things where he'll be pictured with all these like bureaucrats standing beside him or something. It's almost like a sign of a lack of confidence or conviction. And
hmm
Trump doesn't do that. Trump makes it all about Trump. And so if you start telling him to do something, he's going to probably do the opposite or go totally off script and do one of these things where, like when he was interviewed by on Morning Joe in 2016, he was like, frankly, we invented ISIS and we're no angels. I mean, he'll say these like crazy things that you would expect from like an alternative media personality
yeah,
or
like
something.
a serious XM caster from 2007. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And so he'll just kind of go off. And
yeah,
I think it is like for better and for worse, it's his own ego that he just
yeah,
won't be bullied. And I think Trump is at his worst when he's not differentiating himself, like when he's, after October 7th, when all of the Republicans were saying the exact same thing, Trump, Christie, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, et cetera. They're just all being like, Israel is our greatest friend in the Middle East. And Trump was
hmm
saying that. And I think that was Trump at his weakest because, you differentiate.
yeah.
It's about voting for Trump. It's not about voting for the Republican Party. And it's just again with Ron DeSantis, it's like it's about voting for our movement or whatever the hell that is. And
Yeah,
with Trump, it's like no, I incarnate this. It is me,
the
and
movement
that is
that they
powerful.
can't. Yeah, the movement that they can't define. By the way, I mean, I've
Oh no,
never
of course
seen
not.
one of yeah, which it's just even more just tragic, really. It's a second sort of addendum to this question because I do think it's a crucial part. Where do you see Ukraine coming out in the Republican versus Democrat clashes pre-election and the Trump versus Biden clashes pre-election? Because
Well,
I'm
look,
yeah.
we all know that Ukraine is being forgotten. I mean, it's being pushed out of the headlines.
hmm
And that is what it is. It's in some ways natural. Ukraine, Ukraine is struggling with
hmm
the counteroffensive. They've been struggling for a while. I think a lot of people view it as a frozen conflict. They lose interest. This is the big, I mean, the October 7th thing was like the biggest early Christmas present to Vladimir Putin ever. I mean, it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
helped him so tremendously.
yeah.
Uh, but I've also heard murmurings, at least, of moving off Ukraine and things like that. Now, I haven't seen really policy shifts in that direction,
No.
but we'll see. And there's also this kind of I think this happened immediately where it's like, oh, there's the West and the rest. So there's Israel, U.S., Europe, Ukraine versus Russia, Hamas, China, maybe. That's kind of thawed a little bit, but that could rear its head if it happens. So I think it's all ambiguous. But I mean, look, in 2022, I came out and said, I think we should have a ceasefire. We should have a no-fly zone in Ukraine, and
hmm
we should basically have a German solution. So we should adopt West Ukraine into NATO and
Yeah.
maybe the European Union, and basically kind of don't fully abandon East Ukraine, but basically say, look, this is a frozen conflict at the moment. We're going to, it will, when Russia goes down or whatever, we'll take it back in 50 years or something like that.
Because
but
a lot of
I think that would have been a sound. Now, after I said that, Ukraine started winning and Russia looked like it was on its back heels and Russia was losing territory. Then Russia slowly creates all these, Pyrrhic victories of just totally destroying
Bakhmut
cities. Bakhmut being it's these like gray bombed out buildings with Wagner troops waving flags. I mean, it just apocalyptic basically. And so it was all ambiguous, but I do think, I think that if we had done my plan early on, I mean, obviously this is hugely ridiculous for me to say, but if we had done that plan and just frozen the conflict and had a West Ukraine that's a protectorate, I think a lot of lives would be saved.
I don't think it's that ridiculous, because the plain fact of the matter is a lot of the things that we thought were red lines for Russia have been proven not to be red lines at all. So we would, in acknowledgement of that, I mean, I just think there is a line in the sand. If we had have drawn it, that it wouldn't have even been crossed by Russia, and it would have, maybe reduced some of the mayhem and carnage that we've seen over the last 18 months plus.
Russia does not want World War III. I mean, they just don't. They want to, keep NATO at bay, slowly expand their power, extract resources, et cetera, et cetera. It's not that. It's not that it's not a mystery.
So Russia would reintegrate, Richard. Russia would reintegrate tomorrow if they were invited back into sort of the Western economic system. They would. I mean, I think the Russians felt sort of a back against the wall type position that finally the West and Ukraine are getting their act together, and they may present an obstacle that we'll never be able to sort of overcome, say, 10, 20 years from now, if we don't sacrifice 100,000 people to this now, plus, including Wagner, our Chechens, our Tuvash. We're going to lose a lot of people, but it's better than, having a formidable NATO state on our border and inhibiting our Black Sea trade and our naval presence. We just can't have that. We must have war. And we're banking on the West not escalating so much, because they sort of understand this is a pet peeve. It's in our wheelhouse, and you can only do so much. You want to humiliate us, I get it, but we're there are lines that have been drawn, and you're not sending ATACMS and you're not allowing long range strikes, because that we're not going to fuck around. And I thank God there's that understanding. I mean, otherwise it would have gotten out of hand much faster.
A lot of the the slowness and the ineffectiveness of the counteroffensive does fall back on NATO. It does fall back on the lack of foreign support. I mean, they were knocking out with ATACMS. They were knocking out the first air responder bases inside Russia, inside eastern Ukraine. 4 months into the counteroffensive, why wasn't that happening on day one?
Well, they weren't given permission to do it on day one, and the Russians the Russians understood that wasn't happening on day one, so they weren't prepared for it to happen. So every time it did happen, it was a surprise, and then they had to readjust and readjust and readjust. I mean, they finally did. The ATACMS have stopped. Nothing, but I mean, the HIMARS, et cetera. But you'll take losses in the meantime, and it will be great propaganda material. Great propaganda material.
Yeah. Well, let's. I object. You're back. So, would you like to ask your question? Hopefully, I can hear you now.
Yeah, man. How you doing, Richard? Hope you're doing well.
Doing well. I do hear you. What is up with Spaces? Is it that hard to clean out these bugs? I mean, why?
I think it's because they are trying to make it work across such a broad range of hardware, while they also are trying to simultaneously develop it on an iPad and for a laptop, and it's just a boondoggle for now, it seems.
Mm-hmm. But go ahead.
Well, so I keep seeing Biden fall down the stairs, and you make really valid points about pressing against Russia, I think was correct. I think withdrawal from Afghanistan was correct. But the sort of sloppy execution, the sort of constant trips down the stairs, like, is his projecting this sort of global weakness to Zionist mega donors, you think, having like an effect on?
Well, okay. Well before October 7th, there was talk about replacing him. And it was liberals saying that. And I think a lot of the avuncular, like high school baseball coach vibe of Joe Biden was wearing off. And a lot of liberals themselves were seeing him as a liability. Now, I also see them kind of scapegoating him a little bit because they're not addressing their own weaknesses, and they're basically saying, oh, well, it's this old guy or whatever. It's like, who are you going to replace him with? I mean, Kamala Harris, that would be a catastrophe. She is just profoundly unlikable. Gavin, I kind of like the arrogant, 1980s Wall Street energy that that just comes off this man. But I'm not sure Gavin is going to fly with like people in Ohio or something. Like I could see him just scaring them. So, who are you going to do? And there wasn't a good answer to that. I don't know, that talk was there long before October 7th, and every day he gets older. And look, I think a lot of these like conservative highlight reels of Joe like being weird or creepy or senile, I think a lot of this is overdone. You could make the same reels about Donald Trump, saying stupid things at rallies or slipping when he was at that, naval ceremony or something. I mean, but it is real at the end of the day. I mean, the guy is old. I mean, he's such an expression of America. I mean, I wonder if there is going to be like a post-boomer president, in fact, because it's like I don't know. It's like you can make fun of these people all you want. And Joe's silent gen, he's older than boomers, but you can make fun of these people all you want, but then like you don't really have a plausible answer or alternative. And so I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that we went to the boomers in the 90s, we went to the boomers in the 2000s. We had a sort of kind of Gen X president in Obama, and then we just went to people who were significantly older than him. I mean, it's pretty remarkable, actually.
What happens if the President Biden dies? That would be an issue.
Well, I mean, what directly happens is Kamala Harris is your president, and that would just be a catastrophe.
It would be Veep on HBO if you've ever watched that show. It would be funny. Though.
Oh yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I would love to see Kamala do a presidential address.
Speaking off the cuff is the weirdest thing. Do you think she's not intelligent?
She's super intelligent, but so because you know that she's hiding some shit. Did you see her tone?
I think you cut out there.
Yeah,
he cut out there. Yeah.
I did want to ask. Oh, sorry, he's back.
Go ahead. I cut out. It's fine.
It's just basically your question, just because obviously I'm not American. Is it the case that she is just completely unlikable, or is she unlikable and
she's unlikable? I'm unsure about the incompetent stuff because really what the vice president does is basically just be like a PR person at the end of the day. Especially, I haven't seen any vice president do anything, marginally, productive. Like the office of the president is really.
Well, Dick Cheney.
Well, Dick
was
Cheney,
Okay,
yeah.
that's fair.
That was totally different. Yes. I mean, that was what Joe Biden did, though. I mean, what you say describes Joe Biden.
Yeah, but like he's sort
I mean,
of
he although he was kind of interesting in office, actually.
he was sort of like that's what happens with the Democratic Party. They often take on people that are like next in rung as sort of the next representatives, whereas now the paradigm in the Republican Party has shifted quite a lot now, especially with Vivek and Donald.
Mhm.
So I this is my
Mhm.
prediction. The next presidential election, whether it's going to be
Okay. Just when he was getting to his
fuck
prediction.
me.
Let me go to some new people. Oh, you're back. Let me go to some new people.
I was
So,
gonna say
quickly, yeah.
I was gonna say it would be the highway for Newsom if he fixes shit in California, but that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Okay. Guillermo Matatanos.
Hey, what's going on, Richard?
Hey, how are you doing?
Well-
Your accent is not nearly as, Antonio Banderas act as
No.
mine was. I'm disappointed.
I got a few. I've been thinking of a few things. So, I correctly predicted like the last two presidential elections. I won thousands of dollars betting on it, and yeah, you can be autistic. You can look at the polls, but I think a lot of it was like a vibe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And what I'm feeling now is like there is a certain kind of like nostalgia that people across racial lines even that they have for Trump at this point. And I don't think people are as fanatically anti-Trump anymore because his biggest distractors in the past, like they intuitively know that he's not going to do shit whenever it comes to like the most inflammatory stuff he'll go over in the primaries.
Mhm.
And as you said earlier, he's also very good at when it comes to the right wing, he knows how to make the most moderate Republicans to Ben Shapiro to Nick Fuentes all think that he's like completely on board with them, which is like
Yes.
pretty good. And to left wingers at this point that aren't completely deranged MSNBC guys, I think they kind of like low-key miss him a little bit with like his comedic humor and stuff.
Yeah, I noticed this with DeSantis, in the spring and summer, where I would watch some of these like liberal YouTube videos just to kind of like hear an opinion and catch up on politics, and they
Yeah.
were like using the Trump isms. They were like little Ron DeSantis, like not a low energy Ron. Like they were doing Trump voices. Yeah, like the sanctimonious. And then they even got in with the, like he's in high heels, this guy, he's very short. He's frankly, he's under 5'4". They were just getting into this stuff. And I do think they genuinely miss him. The other thing is that, I mean, I mentioned that whole Agenda 47 or whatever, and, the revenge tour that he's going to go on. So, I mean, look, there's some reason to believe that he's just going to turn everything upside down. But we've also seen it, like it's kind of safe now. You can't, I mean, saying that he's going to inaugurate National Socialism, it's a little bit like, really? Like he was president. So,
like it proved that someone even as clownish as Trump still has to maintain the permanent bureaucracy that exists in DC, and I think everyone's internalized that, whether they want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
Isn't that just statehood? What does that mean? Like the permanent bureaucracy? Of course, there's going to be a bureaucracy in DC.
Like that basically you have a handful of people you can pick from, even if you want to purge the White House, and the replacements that are going to be on the short list that people like the Heritage Foundation are going to offer you are all going to be very safe people that aren't going to substantially do anything. That's what I mean.
But they're also the only people that are qualified. I mean, who would you want on whatever, Elon Musk or something?
I don't want anyone. I don't vote. I'm not political. I don't care. I'm just saying that, like,
would you want Nick Fuentes on the Office of Diversity or something? Like, no.
I really don't
probably
like
not
that
going to pick
self-hating
those
Mexican
people.
at all. I'm not no. But I was gonna say there's like two other main points I really just wanted to touch on, and then I'll just let you guys go. I feel as well regarding like Hispanics in swing states. places like Florida where it's gonna like matter, not like New York where it doesn't, like you have a bunch of Puerto Ricans that are super liberal. I think he's gonna be doing like just fine in places like Miami where he can confidently win like places like Florida, which is in Texas and probably Arizona even, I think. He's already getting to the point now where even in the primaries, he's doing like interviews with Univision. He's praising Hispanics. And then for the third point is, I think Biden, he's been a complete disappointment in every possible way. And only like really fanatical, like MSNBC Gen Xer voters seem that like they're the only ones that are going to make the argument that he's making the country economically better. But these, again, are the same super demoralized people by Biden for bending over for the Israeli right-wing Likud party. So, and on top of that, like just the extra icing on the cake is they're tired of having to pretend that Biden just isn't senile, like on top of all that. And then finally, I think it's just like people in general as well, they have a sort of fatigue over the whole Russiagate and the war that's been going on in the Ukraine. And, you know, I think a lot of these people were tired of the fact that all of these Democrats were saying about how tough they were going to be on Russia. And now it's just kind of like they feel like Biden's been super incompetent with that part of the world. So it's just that and like inflation and all, and the fact that there's no like jobs that, you know, really pay over like $25 an hour. The most of the new jobs that are like out for most people are shitty part-time jobs that pay like 17, 18 an hour. I think it's just a perfect recipe for just Biden to just lose in several swing states.
Yep. Caravelt, why don't you jump in?
Sure thing. What I wanted to say was what I said before was about President Biden. If he were to die, and then Kamala Harris would take over. That's why I joined to say that.
Oh yeah, I mean that is true.
But I will comment on what Guillermo just said. I think that the J6 is going to be held over his head. This thing of, you know, he was already president, so nothing bad will happen. You know, these people, I've actually spoken to many of these types of people, and they say, you know, Joe Biden, whatever, but Trump, he's like, he wants to turn the country, you know, crazy and stuff like that. Like, they don't forget this stuff. So now
I get it, yeah. But at the same time, like, they had an impeachment trial over J6 and they didn't impeach him. They're going to have a criminal trial over Stop the Steal in Georgia. But it's like the time for a total reform of the GOP has now passed. And they didn't do it because the GOP they're ultimately cowards. They might be backbiting, backstabbing jerks, but they're ultimately very cowardly. And I think at this point, there is just the possibility of like Chris Christie or like Liz Cheney running a insurgent campaign. This is just not happening. And DeSantis is basically making this terrible argument of, I know you love Trump and I do too, but I'm going to be more competent or savvy than Trump and et cetera. And it's just a very bad argument. And it does not appeal to those people. And you see it in the polls and the results.
What's crazy is that he says
they had a chance to reform and they just didn't. And so we're here again, you know, like I could have seen them reform, like a real top-down party could have been like, we're running Romney again. This is your father's GOP. It's blue blazers and khakis and American flag pens. And, you know, we're just turning back the clock. This Trumpism was a disaster. They just could not do that due to a number of factors, but their cowardly nature being one of them. Go ahead.
What's crazy, I was going to say, is that he does that. He says, listen, I love Trump, but I'm ultimately going to be more competent in office because that's what he needs. Before he then proceeds to say a bunch of zany Trump-like shit to try and specifically poach aspects of his base. So it's like the left hand is in a perpetual war with the right. It's just, it's just a mess. I don't understand it
Yeah.
at all.
I want
All
to
right.
say something as well, real quickly, just from like something I noticed just watching some like Republican Party like debate highlights. It's like Trump has this aura that's similar. It's a lot stronger now than it was in 2016. Even when he's not there, physically there, we're like, who are the people to choose from in the Republican primary outside of Trump? You got like two Italian Americans whose grandparents arrived like 20 minutes ago, like in US American history time. You have like two Indians that argue with each other, and then
The
like a
shame
token
Tim
black
Scott
guy.
left the race.
There's no like alpha like Anglo-Saxon
The one black
foundational
guy
to
you had
actually
there
like
is gay. Yeah, it
right.
is just a total disaster.
But
And
there's no like Anglo-Saxon like boss man to just like be
no,
Trump's nemesis.
no.
But were Anglo-Saxons ever that like uncouth? No, I don't really think so. I think the only person that could have beat Trump is Joe.
Sir, you keep cutting out, sir.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Miss Provolone.
Hey, I'm not even really sure
Hi.
what to say. I'm kind of listening, trying to figure out where everybody's at right now. Because I kind of popped in and like I see the title, "Will Biden Really Lose?" and I figure that's like kind of a joke. I don't see how he could possibly win. But I'm interested in like what was just said. Italian Americans, like, are those not viable Republican candidates?
They're not foundational. That's what I was saying. Like Chris Christie and
Well,
DeSantis, you know,
Christie doesn't.
they want
Please
like
don't count him with my people. I'd rather not.
no, but Christie's not like the settler stock of people that like fought Indians and built log cabins and did all that shit. Like his grandparent or his parents were like cleaning toilets. That's the difference.
I feel like, I don't know, over time, right? Like you're gonna run out of people who fought Indians. Like just based on moving forward in time, there's gonna be.
No, but I think Gavin Newsom is one of those people that I think if he cleans up California, he will have like a very good shot at the presidency in 2028.
I agree.
I think.
Well, not 2024. I would say 2028. Actually.
I have
Did I say
to.
2024?
I
said
have to be
2028.
honest. And like, I'm not a liberal, but like, I gotta say, for the liberals to run Biden again was a pretty sad mistake. As far,
Well, I mean, who would the alternative
I don't
be?
see that.
That's the thing.
When
Who would you pick?
Yeah, I mean, we already covered a lot of this, but
Sorry,
we love
I
our
came in
Guido
late.
Americans. We love them. The meatballs, the spaghetti, we love it. Lasagna Americans, they are the founding stock of this restaurant. All right, sorry, that wasn't even that funny.
Appreciate that, Richard.
I say that in love. I just joking around, of course. All right. Oh, look. Oh no, Jen.
Uh-oh. Hold on to your seats.
Buckle up or strap in, I guess is maybe a more operative.
Strap in, strap on, whatever you want.
Oh, you guys fucking wish. Look, we're all getting fucked by the government, but as probably the only person in this room who has ever been registered Democrat, there's absolutely zero chance that Biden wins. It was absolutely fucking stupid. I don't think Gavin Newsom has a chance. Also, as someone who lives in California, like everyone thinks he's fucking dumb. The only reason why he like semi has a chance is because he doesn't look like he's about to die, right? But I hope that will.
Ms. Jen, you have a nice voice.
Okay, thanks. Anyway,
Jen, in a way, you are representing the phenomenon that I was describing. Like you are evidence for what I was saying, which is that Democratic voters are demoralized, and you just cannot win that way.
for sure. I actually have morals, which is why I don't like identify with any political party at all, because I think they're fucking two wings of the same bird and it's all bullshit. So, yeah, I'm not gonna support.
Vote Democrat though.
What?
You still actually like go out and vote?
I voted for Biden, because I don't know, I just was kind of over, I've said I think like the things that I vote on, I think right now it's really hard to get through Republican debates and be like, wow, this is really like the options right now. Like honestly, I feel like all of it is reflective of our country really needing fucking help. But I know a lot of I don't know. I think that like you vote based on time, right? You don't always have to fully align with a party. And so for me, I feel like I'm not being given a choice on the left. I'd rather have a say on the right? And vote in those primaries. And I think there are a lot of liberal.
Oh, so you voted GOP primaries?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like,
Okay. Do
interesting.
you vote
Who-
negatively or ironically or something, or do you vote for the guy you like the most?
I mean, I vote for the person I like the most, but I think right now I have to vote for the person that I think has the best chance of beating the person who I like the least, because I don't think there's anyone in this upcoming election that I like.
So who
Okay.
appeals to you in the Republican primaries?
Honestly, none of them. I'm having a really hard time deciding. So.
I'm saying
Jen, you
they
seem
seem-
like a Vivek type of young lady.
Absolutely fucking not. Here's the thing. He's going to be alive the longest. Like, regardless of everything else, like, there's no chance that he dies halfway through his term,
Right. Can anyone do a Vivek or a Vivek impression? He drops his G's almost consciously. He's like, I'm going to be speaking the truth. God is real. Now, who that God might be, I won't tell you. I personally worship Kali.
He
I am a blood-drinking maniac who sacrifices young ladies and throw them directly into lava pits. But I also share your Judeo-Christian values.
Do you see how he
Oh,
moves his
fuck
hands
Nikki
and
Haley.
shit? Like, I really hate him. I want to choke him when he's talking because he moves his hands like he's trying to sell some shit to you. Like, you need
Well,
to
Honestly,
he's
get on
trying to
this.
sell some shit to you. He's a total bullshit artist. I mean, I'm sure he's intelligent. He got into these good schools, but I mean, his
I
whole
don't
like
think
claim
he's
to
that
fame is this like
intelligent. He literally told Gen Z that he was going to take away their right to vote and then went on TikTok, a platform that's dominated by them, and his comments are all just like, I edged to this. And like,
well,
you
that's just
have to be
bold.
fucking stupid.
It's
Like,
like I
you have
edge to
to be
taking away
fucking
your vote.
like that's what Gen Z is like all commenting, and it's so fucking funny. It's like you didn't think you were gonna come on here and actually like gain support, because I think
Yeah.
like even Trump and Biden have like weird pockets of support within vocal people. I think Biden's lost a lot of it. And I think in a weird way Trump has as well. So like I feel like both parties could have done a better job at putting forth like a really qualified candidate that you know could take in a lot of voters that are disheartened. Like, why are we repeating an election that we've already had? I just
Wait, so who would be the candidate you'd want to see?
I
Sorry
have
to
absolutely no idea, and I wish I had an answer for that. I genuinely like could not think of one person I would
Well,
fucking
this
run
is
if I
the
was old
thing, though,
enough.
Jen. It's like everyone's unhappy, yet there's no alternative. There's no articulated vision of something outside of this. And so you ultimately have to just eat the shit burger.
I'm
But
gonna run in
it's a good
2028.
opportunity for everybody to collectively not vote.
That doesn't do shit. Like, all of us not voting doesn't do shit. But I do think we need a new system. And I don't know how that system is going to come. And it's probably not going to be peacefully. But, like, I don't think the system has worked for a long time. And I think a lot of what we're seeing and have seen over the past, 10 years is a reflection of that. Because, yeah, there's a lot that's
Yeah.
failing. And there's a lot of people in charge that, like, do not understand the current state of the world.
Violence is probably the answer. I agree.
I think the next phase of politics is narcissism. I think it's going to be unbridled because at this point,
we're already there. But
no, not in what you think it is. It's going to be narcissism in terms of this ethnicity doesn't support me. I'm not going to support it. The divestiture movement has taken off amongst Gen Z. People are
Identity politics
warming
is
up.
already a thing, though. Like, I don't
It's not
actually.
identity politics. Like, I'm
Right,
not
but
talking
that's
about
the
that.
same thing as this ethnic group doesn't support me, so I'm not going to support them. That's like the exact same thing.
No, but the edges, they're rattling. It's sort of like, I think if Trump really wants to get the vote, he should have like ministers of culture, like Azealia Banks for all the black women or some shit. Like that would actually be pretty cool. It would work
I
too.
totally agree. I mean, I think this is an actual alternative, which you are suggesting. I mean, Agenda 47 is going to be the conservative movement on steroids. I mean, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Zag, but I believe it's being promoted, it's being written by the Heritage Foundation. So it is going to be conservatism on steroids, conservatism that has been brewing since the 1970s. Maybe it goes back a little bit. Maybe it goes back 20 years before that.
Maybe Barry
But
Goldwater, or return to that.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's likely. So it's not actually new. And Trump in 2016, there was at least this like possibility that you would have something like that. Like there would be a culture czar. There would be someone who would really address the issue of AI, like in a serious, highly critical manner, as opposed to this just silly, like childlike way that Kamala Harris says that we're going to make it equitable or something. I mean, just really, actually talk real and not in a Vivek way.
The funniest
And
thing was Biden saying in 15 years, we're going to be in crazy places. Like, you are not still going to be here in 15 years.
well, yeah. But like, I think some like real offer like that, I think could be done. I don't think it's going to be done by Trump, back in office with all of these, reactionary conservative fanatics, in his bureaucracy. But I do think that something like that would be possible. But I'm just going to be really brutally frank here. Um, I think fascism is actually popular, and that name is as toxic as hell. But if you actually offer a activist state that is going to do these kinds of things, people would love it. People don't actually want freedom. I mean, it's just, and I know when you say fascism, it has all of this baggage, but listen to my description and not, the horrors of the 1930s,
I
and
agree.
that kind of is that could be the future. Someone has to just boldly offer this, like radical reform of the justice system, cultural policy. I mean, even to give him some credit, Andrew Yang was offering something like this of a universal basic income. Like, we're just going to do it. You won't starve. You're going to have more free time. You can not work. If you're doing shitty, manual labor or jobs that pay $10 an hour or whatever, you're not going to have to work as hard. You can take some time off. You can spend time with your family. You can do whatever. That's and the state will just simply guarantee that. That is, I mean, again, I think Andrew Yang totally lost the plot, but that's a really bold initiative. And I do think that people like fundamentally want this, and it would resonate. But I also think it would have to be a new paradigm for the United States, because the United States has many paradigms. Like, we've had the colonial paradigm, obviously, the Articles of Confederation, the kind of new republic, the post-Civil War Reconstruction, the progressive era, the plus New Deal era, the Great Society. We're kind of living in the civil rights regime still to this day. And everyone is convinced, no matter what their motivation is or ideals are, everyone's convinced that it's failing and it doesn't work and they don't like it. And so it's like, who's going to actually offer that bold new agenda? And, that's the question.
But how can you call it a bold new agenda if it's returning to someplace we've already been, right? Like, I
Where?
personally think that, and I don't know what the solution is, but I don't think it's going to be a derivative of like something we've seen before where it's close enough to be recognized. But I do think that you're
Well,
correct. And a lot of people don't want to think for themselves and they want to be told what to do, but they
yeah,
also want to be able to survive. And I
yeah,
think those two don't go hand in hand. So, right, those are like kind of counter, but I agree with that. I also think, and like, I am not someone who was one of Trump's biggest fans, but like, he understands ratings, he understands media, he understands how to communicate with the majority of America in a way that like no one else has. And he knows how to stay relevant in pop culture, right? And like, these are all things that unfortunately, like, that is a huge part of what is going to happen in our next election cycles. And it's literally going to be like, can you survive the memes and then also be like the source of them? And
right.
I don't think that anyone else, like, it's like, okay, I watched the debates and like there are no candidates that I see saying anything intelligent there or anything and then taking control of the narrative after. And yeah, I think that's
No,
something that
I
like
get it.
everyone
I
is
mean,
going to need to think about.
Trump generates memes. Now he generates bad memes, but he also generates funny memes or good memes. DeSantis only generates like not even bad memes, but like contemptuous memes. Like you can only make fun of him. Like
Keith,
seriously, like it's just. And when he tries to do memeology, like when he hired a interestingly Jewish staffer to create a neo-Nazi, video, and they like projected the Sonnenbrand over the like seal of Florida. I mean, it was just cringe as hell. Everyone hated it. It was denounced, but then it didn't even appeal to the Gen Z Nick Fuentes fans it was trying to appeal to. And it's just like he can't do it. Just period. End of statement. Obviously, I mean Vivek kind of sort of maybe. I mean Nikki Haley, no. Obviously, Tim Scott is already gone, et cetera, et cetera. Biden can. The Dark Brandon thing was pretty fun. The just Biden being a backslapping, goofball is actually like the best version of Biden. So Biden like was able to hold Trump at bay. I mean, I'll give him that credit. I just think it's kind of run out of steam. He's run out of steam personally, and again, the Israel situation is just so demoralizing. He just is. I think it is going to just make his most fervent voters angry, which is the
He's
worst
already
possible
done
thing you
that.
could do.
He's
I
already done
think
that.
I think if there is a way to turn it around and it has to focus on these three issues, first of all, they need to do the student loan shit. I really don't care if you have like a long like list of fucking shit about this is why, repaying student loans for, these children is going to be bad for the environment, economy. I really don't give a fuck because the minute that he does that and that successfully goes to everybody's bank account, they will forget about the Israel stuff. I'm not even gonna lie. Like the economic sort of plunder that like a lot of voting age 18 to 24 uh people are under is just extreme. It's very, very extreme. Second thing, abortion, which I think Trump is coming around on because that is what DeSantis's whole like thing was on, pretty much like discerning between DeSantis and Trump is the abortion policy. And it's just the most unpopular thing ever. It's sort of like when you let out Pandora's box, you have a lot of these women who, have like knowledge of their reproduction or whatever. I don't care if you think it's personally immoral, it just cannot be put back in the box without severe consequences. And that was probably when Biden was had the best, or Democrats in general were represented the best, is when they go against very unpopular things such as this. And then the third thing is there needs to be some sort of like middle ground about the culture war issues, LGBT, whatever. Because I mean, DeSantis is correct. You can't just wear a wig and go into a bathroom.
Okay.
But then it's another thing
He
to.
cut out, but to be honest,
It just sounds really unrealistic. Like, I'm agreeing with the things you're saying, which I know no one on the other side is. But I also do think that a lot of people that were very pro Roe v. Wade getting overturned missed the part where that was your only constitutional right to privacy. And that sucks.
I feel like the recent ruling with Roe v. Wade actually, in some ways, satisfied a lot of people on both sides, in that people in Republican states are like, well, we don't have abortion here, but then liberals kind of know in the back of their mind, well, I can always just drive a
Oh, it
little
is
bit further
so
out if
not
I need
that
an
easy.
abortion.
And if you actually look at the number of abortions, it's gone up since then. But like, there's not access. The thing is that an abortion is also a medical procedure, right? And so, where I think it's a huge issue, and like, I'm not expecting for conservatives to be like, okay, if it's an unwanted pregnancy, which I think is fucked, especially in extenuating cases, but whatever. But like, what's happened too is people will be in the hospital, right? And there are complications with the pregnancy, and doctors are not allowed to terminate it, even though that's like what is going to save the mom's life, right? Like,
Yeah, but
there's,
that's a tiny percentage of abortion still. Like the vast
but
majority is just for
it's
birth control
still,
reasons.
that's affecting the most people that can live to talk about it, right? Like, those are the ones that are affecting the women that are like here and can process it and talk about it. So I think like, if there was even middle ground there, right? You can talk about like its effect on healthcare and healthcare for women. And I know that that's not what this room wants to talk about, but like, that is a big deal. And I know that if Trump was like, I'm going to reinstate Roe v. Wade, I would probably vote for him, right? I think there's a lot of people who are like,
Wow.
especially
That's just
women, that are
crazy
like,
enough to work, actually.
that's what I'm
Well,
saying.
I
It's like,
mean, I think part of
And
the problem
the
with that
GOP
is
would just
that
go along with it. Go ahead,
everyone
sorry.
has been promised for decades, like decades, going back to Clinton, that the Democrats were going to codify Roe v. Wade. Like, they've been promising that and holding that over people's heads for so many decades and didn't do it. And then this happened, and so many liberals were like, wait, how did this happen? And as far as I know, every liberal I've ever spoken to blames it on Trump, which is really interesting considering it happened under Biden's watch. And,
Yeah, he appointed
it
the
doesn't
judges,
need to
though.
go so
He appointed the
far as
judges.
into like, life threatening circumstances. Like, we can just talk about, if you don't want to have a baby, you probably shouldn't, right?
Yeah,
Like,
like 98% of abortions are like, it's just I don't want one, and like that's
so
it.
good. Then if you don't want one, you shouldn't have one. That's my feeling. But hey, call me crazy.
yeah, and you
Regardless.
guys
I
want
see it.
people
Hey
off
guys,
the
guys, guys,
streets,
guys.
but
Let's
like,
not. I basically agree with these perspectives, but we're kind of. I don't know. Let's move on. This. I mean,
No.
it's
I'm not.
kind
I don't
of
want to start a fight
normie
about any
talk.
of it.
We're not. It's
My
not the
point is,
fight that I'm afraid of. This is kind of like how normal people talk about issues, and I'm not normal.
oh, okay. I'll
And
try to be less normal.
jump
What I'm trying to say is, legislatively, let's say. Well, I was interested in asking you, Richard, because you mentioned instituting National
in.
Socialism,
Okay.
right? You mentioned National Socialism as something Biden would institute, right? Am I correct? Right. So I would like to understand
No,
your definition of that.
you're misrepresenting what I'm saying. Okay.
Okay, please correct me.
Fascism was a successful economic doctrine in Europe, and it
No, way
outlasted the
before
Second World
fascism was
War.
brought up, you said way before that, you said that Biden wanted to institute National Socialism. That's what I
I
wanted to
didn't say
know
that.
about, because
I did not.
okay,
I
sorry.
might have I did not say that, but let me tell you my take, and you can react to that. Fascism as an economic doctrine was wildly popular, successful, and long lasting on the European continent. It basically means a conspiracy between the government, corporations, and labor unions in order to compromise or make it the best, etc. So fascism continued throughout Germany in the 20th century, in West Germany. Fascism was popular in France. Fascism was all over the continent.
So just to clarify,
a
as we
little bit,
go on,
it's a new deal
no,
paradigm as
but
well.
I just want to clarify as we go on. that National Socialism is fascism in this
Yes,
conversation.
I consider National
Okay.
Socialism fascism. Yes. So I'm using a bit of an ironic definition here, but it's effectively an authoritarian state that is attempting, through economic policy and collaboration with corporations and labor unions, to create higher living standards and some sort of national dream, etc. And so it's not communism, and in many ways it's anti-communist, but it's also certainly not laissez-faire. It is a kind of third way between that, and it actually has been very successful. So in the United States, this whole thing might need to be renewed. I think the libertarianism plus the civil rights paradigm, I just feel like we're at the end of this thing. And it's not really working. It's like everyone's unhappy, but we have diversity at corporations and all these weird lawsuits and et cetera. I don't think anyone really admires this or thinks this it's, moving forward. I think we're kind of at the end of this type of system.
Okay, so just trying to understand from your perspective, fascism is bad.
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, Richard, I'm
So
just curious. So you see these like European, I guess, social democracies as like being at least economically similar to fascism, but like on the social
Correct.
aspect of things like the sexual revolution, I guess increased immigration from places that are not from Europe. I don't think these
Yeah.
would really go with the fascist ideals that you're probably
No,
talking
but
about.
those are later incarnations. I mean, and they've been grafted onto something. I don't think Europe had the civil rights revolution that the United States did. But
Well, it didn't need
those
to.
things came later. I mean, look, the New Deal was fascist. I mean, just was.
agreed.
In a lot of ways, yeah. We saw similarities between, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascist in its architecture and its economic policy, et cetera. I mean, it's that whereas the Great Society post the Civil Rights Act was something different. It was a different paradigm that came
Well,
decades later.
Richard, can you name a movement in the last 100 years in the United States that has not been leaning fascist?
Yeah, I mean, I think feminism is something very different. The diversity agenda, I think, is something very different than fascism. I mean, I don't want to use fascism either to refer to the 1920s and 30s, and I don't want to use it as just a catch-all for like authoritarians. Like conservatives call liberals fascist or whatever. I'm talking very precisely about a certain social and economic arrangement, and
I
it is
actually happen to
popular, in
think,
fact.
like feminism in particular, the American version of feminism is highly oppressive and fascist, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably debate about that on a side topic, but like, I can't think of anything that's happened as long as I can remember in the United States that didn't lean towards fascism. And
Well, I mean that nothing has happened that didn't lead towards fascism. That seems like an overstatement to me.
for sure, I can understand how you would feel that way. I just don't think, I don't know how to put it. And what I'm trying to say is, I'm not talking about Republicans. I'm not like, I think even looking at the most liberal movements in the United States in the last 100 years, looking at both sides of it, they've both been a little bit oppressive in one way or
Yeah,
another.
okay. You just continue. I'm gonna mute you. You just continue
Oh,
to equate fascism with general oppression, and I've for 3 times now tried to define it for you, and you just are not listening.
Fascism is
So
when the government does
punished.
things that are bad.
Yeah. So punished.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Her. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just one of the resident autists here that needs to do a little bit of respectful correcting here. So I think the terms you're looking for is third positionism, not necessarily fascism. And so in that regard, like there have been, you can argue like the New Deal was probably third position inspired, since that was like a 20th century
Okay, well, you're
accomplishment.
just
But,
using another name. I mean, we
well,
could call
no,
it Mickey Mouse if you want to.
well, not really though, because fascism is like specifically Italian. Like you would agree, like it's not one-to-one verbatim the same as National Socialism, which is not the
I
same as
think,
Falangism or like.
yeah, I don't want to get, you're being autistic. I mean, I don't want to get into some dispute over terminology. I mean, there's
Yeah.
the way it's often distinguished is that Italian fascism is fascism with a capital F. And then fascism, as I have defined it, is a lowercase f. And you could call it anything you want. It's just I've defined what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry. I think you cut out there for a sec.
Yeah,
I
you
don't know if
completely
that might
cut out
be me.
right there.
Okay. Well, fascism, capital.
Yeah, that was more so for the other lady. I know you probably know a little bit more about that, but that's because I could sense this confusion arising. So the autist in me had to
Hey,
kind of
Yeah.
reach out for those that might not be as aware.
Yeah.
hey, Richard, I got a question for you. Have you seen the Pierce Morgan debates recently on the Middle East with Rabbi Shmuley and Cenk
Yes.
Uygur and other guy?
Yeah, I've seen some highlights from those. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Very entertaining.
Yeah. All right, guys. Does anyone want to take over the space like Zag? I think I'm going to go and do some reading
Yeah,
before he gets to sleep. But you like to have
Yeah,
these
maybe.
space, and we have like 500 people. If you want to just take it over, I'll let you.
I mean, yeah, sure. Listen, I mean, we have a platform already.
Yeah.
I was talking to a couple people. I'm sure they'll come in. Yeah. You might have to send that again. I think I missed the.
Okay.
Something's going on with Twitter, man. Elon, there we go. I see now. Elon Musk is got to get his act together here.
He does.
Elon's making me very sympathetic to what's his name, Julian Malema, with how bad he's running this site.
Who is that?
He's that one guy in South Africa that like he does like the kill the boar thing.
Oh, I see. Oh, wow, that was an edgy comment.
I see we got Kaiser up here.
Oh, good.
We got
well, I'll
somebody
listen
who
to
comes from
Kaiser.
a place of
I'll listen to Kaiser before I
true
go.
fascism.
Yeah.
Hi,
The
Richard. Hi,
incarnation.
Ziggy.
Hi, Kaiser.
Hi. Look, I would like to post because I think it's good to have an intellectual debate. I like that stuff. So, so don't take that what I will say as some kind of moral lesson on that nonsense, because I do think. I mean, the problem I have with, let's say, National Socialism. Let's say if you look at it as a political system, and where it also differs, let's say, from the general, let's say, fascist ideology as defined by maybe Mussolini or Franco or whatever, and why I do think it's not a stable form in the long term of governance for the following reasons. National Socialism, the German National Socialism, expressively points out. I mean, it's a very, very strict hierarchical kind of order society, even stricter than the Italian version. But you can say, okay, that's maybe just a nuance. But what is really different is the need for constant struggle. This was always, let's say, by the leading ideologists of during the Nazi era and before, that was always pointed out. A society needs constant struggle. This is why Adolf Hitler said every generation needs a war, and to keep the people to keep the things basically dynamic. And what I am seeing is the problem is if you define a society as constant struggle, let's say, from an empirical point of view, sooner or later, this society will just eat itself up. And we all know, when you look at it, let's say, everyone, obviously, the Führer was, he was, unchallenged. No one would have dared to go against Adolf Hitler within the party. Not so much out of respect, partly yes, but partly out of fear. But when you go one level below, you know it yourself, Richard, it was basically a kind of cat fight, Game of Thrones scenario where everyone was against everyone, fighting constantly. And that was actually not a bug, but it was a feature. Adolf Hitler liked it that way, because he wanted to keep, as he said, constant struggle. And also with that, obviously, from a pragmatic point of view, he could then typical divide et impera. He could basically hold his position in relative safety. So here's my thing, to make it really short, Richard. I don't think that in the long term, let's say a German kind of fascist version, not talking about Franco and that stuff, is not, let's say, sustainable in the long term due to the the expression of of constant struggle, constant fight. I think that would eat up in the end any kind of society. But that is just, let's say, food for thought here.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. And what you say is accurate, at least with regard to what I've read about National Socialism, is that it was this just endless, episode of Game of Thrones, nonstop going on. It's kind of funny when you think about it. Goebbels was fighting off Hitler very early on. He lost, and he kind of bent the knee in many ways. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing. There is a tradition of this constant struggle and overcoming in America with the watering the liberty tree and so on. There's a certain Jeffersonian tradition that wants to kind of burn it all down. So I don't know. I think it needs to be countered by something else. I agree that that can lead to burnout at the very least, but I think it needs to be countered by some kind of long-term stable elite. In the United States, we've lost an assertive or definitive WASP elite, and so there's in a way kind of no elite in the United States. And, we have people who are kind of like residues of that. And there's an attempt, if you go to Princeton, you want to dress preppy or something, is almost like an homage to that. But I don't think we really have that type of class. And so there, you can think of it as a kind of, Apollo and Dionysus, as Nietzsche described it, this, on the one hand, a drive towards form and beauty and appearance, and another, on the other hand, a drive towards chaos and dark energy and so on. And these kind of like, they need one another. And I think in the United States, we kind of don't have that. We don't have a definitive elite class. And it's kind of where I've come to while I've thought through this, is that I'm not even positive America has a deep state as it is properly defined, as this long-term, obviously unelected, but undefeatable presence in the country. I think we have all of these countervailing forces, and they agree on certain things, and they can push in certain directions together, but they also really are countervailing. And it's kind of like, this government that's like funding Israel, backing Israel ideologically, but then also funding its enemies, doing the cleanup afterward. It's just this kind of like visionless, pointless chaos. And I think that's actually a real problem. I think the fact that we don't have a deep state in the United States is a real issue. And and we just have a
So
bunch of moneyed elites that have certain interests, and they're certain. It's like the United States is like a big vessel that's pushed in different directions. And
which
yeah, go ahead.
look, I just said you're so spot on. I mean, everyone talks about deep state, deep state, deep state. It's becoming actually kind of a meme, a little bit ridiculous, because you're so fucking spot on. And when I think about the deep state, I think about, let's say, in the German context, about the network of Prussian Junkers, for example. A clearly defined group of people, the same mindset, the same kind of mentality, the same background, the network. And what the United States has, it's forces who sometimes collide and sometimes work together. And for certain, but it's never stable. You cannot. No one, everyone who talks about deep state, that no one of these people can ever point out a homogenic group of people who are basically working to maybe counteract certain decisions who are made on the surface. That doesn't exist, because it simply doesn't exist, and it existed in. So in Italy, for example, you can call the whole, let's say, mafia setup, the Ndrangheta, a deep state. Absolutely. You could call this the network of Prussian Junkers in the old German Empire and Weimar Republic a deep state. But in the United States, I think it's way more accidental, like little atoms, who are then sometimes colliding, and sometimes they are agreeing, disagreeing, but it's never something which has any kind of stability in the long term.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if there were a deep state, I would try to join them. But, alas. But yeah, even someone like Vivek is an expression of that, like, weird elite we have in the United States. I mean, he's the son of immigrants. He's went to good schools. His mother was a physician, I believe. So, I mean, he's got some cred there. I'll give him that. But he gets into this a point of status that he's running for president as this guy who, like, does a Wall Street fraud. I mean, from what I can tell, he bought a old formula that had been rejected by another corporation, and that to cure Alzheimer's. And then he goes on TV and is talking it up, and he's the great new hope, for the country. This is just amazing stuff. And he becomes this multi-millionaire, and then he drops out. The company's gone. I mean, it's just like, it's that type of person is defining, to some degree at least, defining it more than I define it, defining it to some defining the state of the country and the vision for the country. I mean, that's just abominable in many ways. I don't even hate Vivek that much, but I do think he's a fraud. And the fact that he's in the position that he's in really shows that there's something has gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Richard, I think Ramaswamy is, I don't know, do you think he's misunderstood, or is he just a little bit out there with his foreign policy, and is he almost like, I sort of see that he could be, what was the guy, Andrew Yang? He has some sort of similarities.
He's got some Yang vibes.
Yeah, where he wants to just like break it up and say, no, I'm here to make things work for you truly, and then in that process end up ruining the system. I don't know.
Well, maybe. I mean, I think there's he's kind of like an alpha nerd, which is an interesting
he's genuinely
combination.
Just applying to be Trump's VP. That's how I see this whole thing.
That might be true, but I don't think that will happen.
He won't. But I mean, the Indians will try. Indians are the kind of people that, like, they suck up to anyone they perceive as to be higher than them and treat anyone a tiny bit lower like they're just dirt. And it's like, yeah, I totally see this.
Yeah. And clearly there's some, like, passionate ethnic grievance between Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy.
It's my favorite part of the primary. Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she called him scum. I mean, that's, like, really strong language. I didn't even use that. I just simply called him a fraud. But, yeah, I think that's true. But, like, he's an alpha nerd. He's like a nerdy type. He's an alpha. But he does this straight talk where he's like, let's clear through the garbage here. I'm just going to tell you the truth. It's like he's going to tell us some profound philosophical wisdom.
He's like,
it's
I'm
just
a
these
straight up
talking points. It's
he's
like
basically
God is real, guys.
He's basically I'm a greasy Indian, and like Nikki Haley is like the same as me, but she's pretending to be the Southern Belle, and like, why not just go for like the real thing who's open about it?
Yeah, I see that. I see that. All right. All right. Are we Nuance jumped in here for a little bit, but I guess he just popped out.
I don't know
anyone else want to?
I don't know what happened to him, Richard. Usually he comes in and stays, but it's possible he got a call or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see where some of the field ends up landing. They're all not going to be able to work for the nominee or whatever, but I think Ramaswamy and Trump are there'll be some sort of a connection there. I think he sort of recognizes him as.
Well, who do you think Trump is going to choose? Like, I'm curious.
I think he wants to choose like a woman, but I think now with the issues with Haley, he's going to have to reconsider. She was sort of groomed as a protege of his initially, and then fell off. I think was the ambassador of the UN under Trump. And then basically came out and said, "Oh no! I was held captive on this ship. This wasn't my intention. I was just doing my job. Trump is a real problem for democracy. Trust me, I'm not a revolutionary type spiel." Right. And I think that sort of ended her chances with Trump moving forward, because he's probably like, "That Nikki Haley, let me tell you something." Yeah. So I think his Indian's probably Vivek.
Yeah,
I just couldn't. I just can't see it, but it's.
I guess
it's possible. I don't know. He picked Mike Pence as a beta male, so I think he's gonna do that again. But I think he won't do it. He showed so much contempt for the people running against him that to pick one of them, I think, would be rather odd. He hasn't even deigned to appear on stage with them. I don't know. I think he'll. I don't. Who's that woman who looks like a hot, Kellnerin or bartender waitress from South Carolina.
Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace, yeah.
Oh, not Nancy Mace. No, she's from South Dakota or North Dakota, one of them.
Oh, the former governor or current governor, Kristi Noem?
Yeah, Kristi Noem. Yeah, I could see that. Nancy Mace, that would be a little too wild.
Yeah. Noem got into trouble with the whole trans sports thing. She allowed it and saying, like, I can't stop this. Like, our state will get sued to no end. And people were calling her like a trans apologist and saying that she lost the script for conservatives. I don't know how I felt about all of that. Like, I think she was just weighing the pros and cons for the state. Like, the state would get crushed by lawsuits if they outlawed trans sports in college. So yeah, I don't know about her. She seems like fairly intelligent, but then again, like she like, it's scripted. She could probably read a script and memorize. But so I question. She can come off as fairly okay, but deep down, I think she's kind of an idiot.
Do you think he's going to do Tucker Carlson?
No, I don't think so. I think what kind of experience does Tucker have?
Yeah, I know, but Trump is offering a new order. I mean, this is totally different. I mean, granted, as VP, you're just the master of the Senate. It's almost like a formality.
Yeah, I could see Tucker working as an advisor for sure.
Yeah,
I think
he's
Tucker
going
that right now.
Donald Trump will choose his daughter Ivanka to be his vice president. Mark my words.
I don't think they can be involved again.
No.
A question to you guys, because you're expert of the American political system. isn't it like the biggest problem, or let's say the biggest dichotomy when it comes to the VP? I mean, it's like, do you want a guy who's a good team player? I mean, he would be a perfect VP, or do you want a guy or woman who could become president? Because those two things are not the same. It's like, there are people who are perfect assistant coaches, the perfect assistant coach, but they will never be able to become the head coach. And here's the thing: what do you choose as a VP? That's always the question, isn't it? So I don't know how these decisions are made. What's your take on that, Zegunal and Richard?
Yeah, look, we saw what he did last time. He chose a total beta cuck who just went along with everything outside. I mean, he almost went along with being hanged. I mean, I think he was kind of on the fence about whether he should hang himself, but he pulled out at the last moment. But I mean, yeah, I think that is the script, and Trump doesn't want to be overshadowed. I don't think Trump can be overshadowed. So yeah, I don't know someone who like actually gives him something and who'd be willing to do it. I don't know. DeSanctimonious.
That would be incredible.
Yeah, and then he just hangs him like in January
on J6. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't think it'll be Carrie Lake?
They're just like, we want to get to the bottom of this, and they he brings him on national television, and then takes his boots off. He's like, we gotta learn. The people want to know. This is really troubling me personally, Ron. And he just sees that this guy's wearing risers, just ritualistically humiliates him, and then replaces him. That would be funny.
Do you think it'll be a woman?
A woman? We said maybe a woman.
I can kind of see it. Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if he picked someone like Josh Hawley.
Oh God, no! Oh God, no! I mean, that would be. Have we had a homosexual in vice president's office before, Richard? I don't know. That might be a first.
That's a good question.
Maybe Dan Quayle. No, I'm kidding, but Dan
Quayle. You're accusing him of homosexuality?
No, I'm joking. He's just.
Chuck says they're all homosexuals.
Well, yeah, Chuck says everyone's a homosexual.
Chuck would be like, has there ever been a heterosexual president? That's the question. No, I think that's a bit much.
Yeah, also, you think people may not want to work with Trump? You think there could be that stigma?
Well, no, this is what I've said. I mean, that's this cope from people in Washington. First off, a lot of them will. And they could parlay that into a job as oh, I'm so sorry, I resigned, Farrah, that woman or whatever. But the other thing, as I've said before, there are these guys out in the middle of the country. And it's like that senator from Oklahoma who challenged someone to a fight on the floor of the Senate. There are these dudes, and their names are Buck. And on weekends, they wear black T-shirts with an American flag and some kind of threatening statement like the Second Amendment forever or something, and they are Punisher logo tattoo. There's this type of dude out there, and he's not been at the top of the. He's not been in pole position. He's kind of in the second place or third place. He's been out in the hinterland. But, to be fair, he's not really any less intelligent than the current people operating in Washington. And so, Trump will easily find a bunch of replacements. You've just never heard of them. But it also doesn't mean that they're, totally dumb or something like that. I think they'll jump at the chance. And so I think they'll find tons of people. Yeah.
I think there's a good chance this time around, instead of looking for someone like Pence, he looks for an attack dog that would make Democrats think twice before impeaching him. It's okay, you want to get rid of me? Well, this guy's twice as bad, and he's significantly more intelligent than me. So go for it.
Yeah. Maybe DeSantis. That would be kind of a weird alpha move.
I think there have been situations where two people that hated each other in the primaries eventually became president and vice president.
Biden and Obama.
Biden, Obama, George Herbert Walker Bush as well. There actually was a bit of a like conservative revolution at the RNC in the
Yeah.
70s, and I guess it was when they were nominating Ford, and it was basically like Rumsfeld, Cheney, and a number of other people who were behind Ford, and Reagan bent the knee. He lost. And then Reagan brought all those people into the administration in the 80s, and then George W. Bush brought them back. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of precedent for it. It's just the attacks on Ron DeSanctimonious have been just so vicious. It just seems to be on a different level.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll just do something totally wacky. Who's the guy who's like running UFC?
Dana
White.
Dana White, yeah. Just something totally out of left field.
That would be a choice.
Yeah, that would be a choice.
It's coming to something like that, though, Richard. Eventually, the politicians may become so stale that there's no choice but to look on the outside. I mean,
yeah,
that was Trump. People were sort of sick of the Obama era, big government, sort of covert, deep state, winking and nodding, but actually spying on you, droning you, doing all these things, expanding the security state. I think people got tired of it. And I don't know. We'll see how tired of it they are this time around. But I think as long as Joe Biden is stuck in these foreign quagmires, there's a good chance that people will say, "You're doing too much for them. You're not doing enough for us." And that's exactly what Biden wants to avoid.
Yeah. Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, Bush was a real weirdo with Putin. I can see into his soul. I look into his eyes. I saw into his soul.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we've miscalculated him over the years, but I think Bush may have had a little bit of a better view on him, that he became a little bit embittered by the world politics. And I think he started out as a useful player. And I remember he sang that song on karaoke on Blueberry Hill, and all the Hollywood celebrities were there, like crooning. And this was in 2009, something like that. So people really wanted to like him, and said, "Oh no, Putin's that cunning fox, but let's just keep him, out of our henhouse." And they really weren't able to do it. I think he took advantage of their naivete about him.
Yeah.
He is ruthless. He is a killer. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Would Trump ever leave office?
He might. He might leave office. I think only if the legal troubles continue. I've often thought that if he went to these people and said, "If I withdraw from politics forever, will you drop all these charges?"
Yeah.
And I'm sure they would say yes.
Yeah. Maybe not Fani Willis, though.
No,
I think
her.
she's a little she's actually kind of problematic, actually. Jack Smith, I think, would say yes.
I think he would say. I think Letitia James would say, "We're not dropping, but we can arrange a plea deal that's basically a slap on the wrist."
Yeah.
Same thing for Jack Smith, and if Fani Willis is Georgia, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not going away. That could be the one that sort of haunts him into the campaign, late into summer, fall of 2024. That could be a problem, and that will be bombshell breaking. Jury could convict, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a problem for Trump.
Yeah. I object. You want to jump in?
Yeah, just surprised that no one has said Carrie Lake. It seems like Carrie Lake's been kind of Trump's bottom bitch.
Who?
Carrie Lake is what.
Carrie Lake. Ooh.
I mean, she's definitely an attack dog. She's MILF-tastic. A few other things going for her. I mean, I think I could see him doing something like that. That would just be too MAGA. I think he ultimately wants to be plausible.
I just think after the Pence shit, he wants someone that he can trust, to some degree, and he can't trust anyone except for the dog.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
maybe it'll be you, Richard. Maybe you guys can reunite.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Nah, Richard, that wouldn't work out, Richard. You know it. Because Richard, at the end of the day, that's the problem with Trump. Trump will not accept someone who will, let's say, push back beyond a certain degree.
Yes.
And you will not be able to help yourself. You will have to push back something. It is what it is, man.
Oh yeah.
Like that is and that wouldn't work. So I could imagine Trump would accept a woman because generally he would say, okay, it's a woman, whatever. So Nikki Haley would have been really the perfect candidate, but she fucked it up. Yeah, she fucked it up.
Yeah.
And but she would have been perfect. And Vivek
maybe
also
Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard.
Maybe, yep, that would be
because
possible.
she ran for president. She is obviously some sort of I don't know, sleeper agent or something in the Democratic Party. I no idea.
Switched, man. I don't think she's even hiding it anymore.
No. I mean, what I mean is, like, how long was she a sleeper agent? I could kind of see that, actually. Military background, white-ish.
The thing is, like, dude, I remember, like, I think starting around 2016, like, she was always that Democrat that they'd invite on Fox News, especially Tucker's show, to just, like, never argue with them and, like, only talk about, like, shit about Democrats.
Yeah.
So I always felt like that was kind of her angle.
Yeah. To go from a Bernie bro to a Trump VP, that would be, wow, within 10 years.
Richard, why not? Because this is the whole pedestrian divide of policies and parties is too pedestrian anyway. And Tulsi Gabbard would give him credibility. Because, Tulsi Gabbard would be the voice of the working class. A credible voice, to a certain degree. And that is only beneficial for Trump. She's not, like, say, we talked about earlier, Nikki Haley, Vivek, there's still some kind of, okay, I used the word, I'm sorry, bourgeois elites, Tulsi Gabbard isn't that. And she made that very clear. She's the voice of the American working class. That would be awesome for Trump, honestly. Tulsi Gabbard that combination would mean, hey, guys, I'm more than a party, like, fuck parties. I will make America great again. And who gives a shit about parties here? That would be a great sign, honestly. But let's see.
I agree with you. I that's where Trump is most powerful, is he's above these things. Whenever he tries to play their game, he always fumbles the ball. Like, if you remember back in 2016, where he came out and he said, on abortion, he was like, frankly, yeah, we'll have to kill a bunch of women. I don't know. And he clearly didn't know what he was talking about. And all the pro-lifers were up in arms. They're like, that's not what we want to do or how we talk about it. We want to punish doctors or some ridiculous thing like that. But he's just not... He's not good. Well, you want to punish women, right?
Hannah? Oh yeah. No, I would prosecute women who seek abortion.
Right. And the doctors too, who provide it.
Yeah, the doctors
but
too.
That's actually I think the pro-lifers are so hypocritical when they say that, like, the woman is the real victim here or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you hire a hitman, if you consider this murder, which they do, they claim to, and if you hire a hitman to kill your boss or ex-wife or whatever, mother-in-law, you don't say that, like, the person who paid the hitman is the real victim.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, and so this is a lot of drama that's kind of going on with the pro-life versus, like, abolitionist movement right now. So Mike Johnson actually tanked a bill in Louisiana that would allow for the prosecution of women seeking abortions. And so anyway, yeah. But it's the only consistent position, in my point of view, if you're going to
Yes.
claim to be pro-life.
No doubt.
One thing always comes to my mind when I think about Donald Trump and MAGA. It's the speech of Kaiser Wilhelm. I don't endorse the guy because he was an idiot, but when at the outbreak of World War One, when he was standing on the
you endorse his mustache.
He said, from this moment forward, I don't know any parties anymore. I only know Germans. So, and that is the kind of, I think Trump is not an ideologist, and he wants to stand above that, like an old school emperor. You don't get into the muddy waters of ideological policies. You do what's right,
right.
And that would actually. I mean, Trump can be. Honestly, it's crazy to say that 6 years ago I would have thought impossible, but he could be if he gets his ego in check. He could be a person who maybe can unite America to a certain degree, which others will never able be to do so. But the problem
it would be
ego,
funny,
Richard.
Kaiser, if Donald Trump said, "I don't know parties anymore. I only know Germans."
Yeah, that would be funny. I mean, maybe you should exchange the word Germans for Americans.
Right.
I think that would work.
That would be next
Imagine
level.
that slogan.
Yeah.
Slogan. That would resonate with so many Americans. Like, fuck the parties. It's about
Right.
Americans here, and we are doing what's right. And who cares about any kind of theoretical playbook here? We are doing what's good for our country. That would resonate very well with a lot of Americans.
Well, isn't the ultimate outcome of hyperpolarization just some sort of authoritarian regime? Because we can't hold it together otherwise.
It's the end result. It's the inevitable end result. Yes, as you said, if the post, because this is how these authoritarian, often let's say military dictatorships, especially in Latin America, rise, because they say, "Fuck that shit! You guys cannot keep it together." Or in Turkey, you see it in the past all the time, like that 4 or 5 military juntas, because the political divide was too big. Society couldn't move forward. It was a frozen status quo. And then the military comes and said, "Fuck that shit!" We must move forward, and that is why the military, these countries, has this often a good image because they're not a political force; they are force. They are national force, a force for the people. Look at Egypt, for example. Very good example.
Yeah.
They can fight wars for shit, but they're very good at other stuff.
The real Dawn Marie. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just joined, so I'm sure I'm kind of behind the 8 ball, but you really don't think Biden's going to lose? I mean, that's your headline, will Biden really lose? And I'm trying to think, he's only got 33% in the latest poll of people supporting him. He's 81 years old, 81. I think he just had a birthday or about to have one. We all know he's got cognitive issues. We are seeing the January 16th.
This is way too normie. Okay. This is way too
normie. Way too normie? What is that?
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. We get all that. Yeah. We get all that. That's just, we agree.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, there's all these issues are clear, right, Richard? The age, the foreign policy mess, the rift. Like we sort of understand that. That's all the
polls. All the polls show that big government sucks. It's got this in the bag.
Americans won't stand for socialism. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I might go do a little reading now. Do you guys want to stay on, Zag?
I mean, I think if you're gone, we should close because I couldn't bring nuance up. He had to.
Let me mention one thing. Earlier, guys, you were talking about Trump being indicted while president. I think that's what he's working so hard to do, to avoid that, because once you're a president, you have immunity. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting. You
Not
guys,
when you leave office, though.
I'm sorry.
But he's
I said,
never
as
going to
soon,
leave
and you have
office.
immunity. Yeah, you have immunity until you leave office, and if you die in office, well, I guess things are taken care of then, right?
Yeah,
You know,
he's
it's
never
so
going to leave
interesting. I
office,
mean,
Zach.
let
No,
me
I
put.
agree with you. I think he's going to die. I think Biden will win the re-election and will pass away, or will become so frail that he'll have to sort of, like the Emperor in Star Wars when he didn't have the strength, sort of being wheeled around in the shadows, and he'll have like his Vader, I guess, whoever that will be leading the show. But yeah, I really do think he doesn't have another 5 years left. That would bring him to what, 80, 87? Almost 88, almost.
Yeah.
God bless. That's that's right around the age people pass. So I think that, given the stress too, Richard, like every president who takes office, you see the way they age.
Oh yeah.
So he is all those new brown spots on his head and everything. That's all just, he's wearing himself out. And every time he flies abroad, he gets off the plane looking like, oh my God, I'm just not capable of functioning properly. Where am I? Please direct me the right way to go. This way, that
Well,
way. Who
I
are
get
you?
that way. When I fly like 2 time zones, I are more or less that way. I mean, in his defense, flying
Oh
is
no, like I'm
very
not. Yeah,
difficult.
of course. And for someone who's an
Yeah.
octogenarian, that becomes even harder.
Oh my God.
I think
Yeah. I can
the absence
imagine.
of his vice president in this whole campaign is suspicious. Why isn't she talking? Where is she talking? You don't even hear or see her in public at all. That's actually a big weakness on his part. You know,
Yeah.
that's probably going
He
to
could
make him.
be strategic too. I mean, he could be totally neutering Kamala Harris. I don't think there's too much love lost there. And like I'm not sure Biden's too like keyed in on what's going on with her. He may just have like this sort of blanket statement like, do whatever you want, but just make sure she's not promoted. I don't know. That's sort of a hunch I have.
Yeah. Supposedly there was a lot of tension behind the scenes between Biden and Obama. I think maybe it was even on your space, Zag, someone was mentioning this with evidence that they did bring Biden on as like the white guy to settle people down, and
Yeah.
significantly older than Obama as vice president, so he's not a natural successor. It's fairly interesting. Obvious, I'm glad you're here. You can say something outrageous.
Top of the morning to you, Richard. How do you do?
How are you doing? Are you
Yeah,
drinking a
good.
Foster's right now?
No, I'm having McGuinness. I'm an Irishman today. Just
Oh, you're
wondering.
an Irishman today.
Yeah. I've been converted, and I've been wondering, now that our man Biden has made a fool of you, do you regret your support of Biden at all, my laddie?
I guess you might have missed the opener. I treated Biden fairly. I think that he has been pretty good, and there are a number of things that I would defend about him. And if October 7th had never happened and the invasion of Gaza had never happened, I probably would be supporting him. I mean, I would be discussing the total insanity of the Trump movement, and maybe I shouldn't say insanity, the religious fervor that it drives the Trump movement. And I would be talking about that seriously, but I wouldn't be talking like this. I would probably be predicting his reelection and supporting it. But
Yes.
he lost
Yes,
me.
it's. Do you think he's Irishness? Do you think really you shouldn't have overlooked that in the first place?
It's a good point.
You can never trust an Irishman, my friend. They'll always stab you in the back. It's a stab in the back theory of mine.
Yeah, I mean, I should have listened to you as our greatest Irish critic and bigot. But yeah, Do you think
That's okay. You only had two options, so you went with one or two. That nobody can fault you for that, Richard.
what do you think some residual Irish identity and almost a residual Catholic identity, does that play into Biden? I feel like it's not very significant.
Well, all of his family is married into the tribe, so to speak. So I don't know. I don't really think so.
Yeah.
And all his grandkids are all members of the tribe now, or married to members of the tribe. So yeah, I play at the Irish thing, but I love our Irish friends.
Oh yeah, we know that.
Only the Northern Irish though.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah, thanks. All right, I'll let you guys. Yeah,
the Catholicism for Biden was played up as a way for him to look moderate and level-headed, and like, I'm not a crazy leftist. I still have these sort of old world rooted values and like the doctrine and the dogma. But I think when a lot of people saw him with the abortion stuff, say what you will about that, they said, well, he's not a real Catholic, and look at him taking communion. I don't know. I think those people need to calm down a little bit, but it is clearly a political play saying I'm Catholic Joe.
I loved that meme of like George W. Bush talked about ending abortion. You know, Donald Trump talked about ending abortion. Biden ended abortion. He's like like crypto Catholic. I don't know.
Bush, you had Protestant.
Is it wrong?
Bush was a Protestant. Trump was a Protestant. Obama was a Muslim, and then the first Catholic is like, boom, gets rid of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a atheist communist Muslim. I mean, the worst kind.
Exactly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't William F. Buckley a Catholic as well?
Yes.
Don't
get me started on this. The degree to which the conservative movement is Catholic just cannot be underestimated. It is
being an American Catholic in general is a LARP.
Their voting base is Protestant in Southern, but their leadership and thought leaders are overwhelmingly Catholic. I mean, in some ways, we might want to, blame them, so to speak, for.
Yeah, why do you think that is, though, Richard? Like, what is that?
Well, I think Catholicism, there was a time in the United States where, this is the most kind of like charitable reading. There was a time in the United States when being a WASP was the thing, and Catholic had a kind of ethnic vibe to it.
Yeah.
Of you're not part
Irish.
of the elite, you're Irish, you're Italian, you're not really with it, you're et cetera, et cetera. And I think as these differences and distinctions kind of got watered down, et cetera, Catholicism kind of had a resurgence as this like an intellectual's religion. You know, it's like you should convert to Catholicism in order to have pretensions to medievalism or something. It just became this kind of like thinking man's thing. The other irony of this is that you have like someone like Scalia, who's an Italian Catholic, but then his entire ideology is like literalist, like Protestant, going back to the text, and every word of it is true. And you shouldn't even interpret it. You should just, a kind of textual fetishist. It's this weird contradictory thing.
Americanism and Catholicism literally are just contradictions, and like we've had former popes just say that straight up.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt.
Like Catholicism is meant to be a totalitarian, all-encompassing religion under a monarchy, not a fucking like liberal republic.
Yes, I agree. Now obviously we're like well past this, but you know what I mean. I think it's just been so watered down that being a Catholic is kind of like a pretentious thing to do.
It is 100%. And now it's gotten to the point where a lot of these guys who want to be pretentious and work like the types to convert to Catholicism 5 years ago, that's not enough. And now they got to do orthodoxy. That's like the newer one. And it's like, dude,
what's
like
next?
Your ancestors were like dairy farmers in Pennsylvania. Like, why are you LARPing as an Orthodox person? Like, I don't understand it. It's strange to me.
No, a serious question. What is next? Like, what can they do that's more medieval than become more
the Kingdom of Jerusalem 2.0?
Kingdom of Jerusalem? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's maybe the end of the line for them, but America is a Protestant country, and I don't really know what to say about that. This notion that there's some like Catholic tradition with the founding fathers is just absurd.
Yeah.
The only founding
you could
father
argue
was...
that there's. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, there's only one founding father who's Catholic, I believe, John Carroll of Maryland. So
right.
I very much reject that. You're like, well, Catholicism and its roots of the founding. No. That Catholicism pretty much came here with the ethnic white immigrants of Europe. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a historical fact. I mean, you could make a case for like Unitarianism and deism. I mean, as like the true American religion. That's a much sounder case than these like West Coast Straussians about the medieval tradition of the founders. Give me a break.
I mean, the Catholic Church straight up says like you cannot join secret societies like Freemasonry. So even if you had like a few nominally Catholic founding fathers, like they were definitely in those circles. You had to be.
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting.
It is kind of funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, Italy is full of Freemasons, Richard. Italy is full of Freemasons. And I asked, are they Catholic Freemasons? Oh, of course. So I think that's just hysterical.
Yeah.
Yeah, Latin America is the same way. Like, our founders were Freemasons, by and large.
None of it means anything. Like a Catholic should be loyal to the Pope primarily, and when the Pope calls for a ceasefire and Joe Biden says no, like, what does any of it matter?
Yeah, I more or less agree. I mean, I think there's been a watering down of all of this stuff to the point that it's merely pretentious on some level.
But like,
I mean, what does it mean that like Rod Dreher is Orthodox or something? Like, what does that actually mean?
No, but like, even when Pope Francis calls for a ceasefire, like he knows nobody's gonna like change their mind because he said so. But like hundreds of years ago, the Pope could just send an army to fuck someone up. It's just the dynamics are just gone.
Yeah. After a point, the warrior Pope Julius II, the papacy was militarily weak for a while until they weren't. And then they would say, not only are we going to tell you what to do from a religious dogmatic, but we're going to come with our military and occupy you, conquer, especially in the Italian peninsula. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, the papacy would wield an iron sword and a Bible and say, now get in line. And yeah, it was very problematic in European history. And right, Richard, eventually they sort of lost their oomph and no longer the Habsburg Empire through Spain and Louis XIV.
Yeah.
None of those people are going to be controlled or subjugated by the Pope anymore.
No, I mean, I think that the creation of the absolutist state went against it. There's no doubt. There's also no doubt that just the success of the Protestant Reformation led to a kind of long-term demoralization of the Catholic Church wielding power like that. So it was kind of like the Protestants and then the outcome of the wars of religion of a cuius regio, cuius religio kind of thing. I think that basically put it to a point. I don't know the last time, like you might know this, Zach. When was the last time that the Pope like sent an army somewhere?
I think it was like
it's kind of funny to even think about it.
Yeah, I think you look back at the Borgia Pope, who was very militaristic. Pope Julius was very militaristic, and then sort of by about the late 1500s, early 1600s, you started to see like the Catholic states, France, Spain. They came in and basically did the work for the Pope. they would sort of come in and say, you know, under the banner of the Pope, we've received the papal blessing, therefore we can do X, Y, Z. So I think kind of with the end of the Renaissance, the popes were no longer as relevant to the world order, militarily speaking. But yeah, they were quite powerful for a while.
No, don't forget, guys, that the Pope played a big role during the Polish Revolution in '89. He worked very closely with the Reagan administration, and they helped tip the balance and make the Polish overthrow the communist regime there. So that's powerful. And you know, when the Pope did that at the time, Poland was in the forefront of the movement to abolish or to change communism, and it kept going. So it can be useful, it can be powerful, and sometimes for a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the Vatican. I want to say that during the Cristero Wars in Mexico, like I think they supported the Cristeros while the Ku Klux Klan in the United States was actually supporting the communists, just because they hated Catholicism that much.
Interesting. I've never looked into that.
Yeah, look it up. That shit was wild. They were literally supporting
Fascinating
the
stuff.
people in Mexico that were
All right,
saying
guys,
that they need to
I am getting a
outlaw
little
atheism.
bit tired. I'm going to go do my nightly reading, and good call. And thanks for being on. Thanks for participating.
Yeah,
And
thanks
I will.
Richard. Thanks for hosting.
Yes. So Chuck didn't show his face. Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting, but Charles was I think he was at the Symphony this evening, so I'm not sure if that may have coincided. But we'll try to get the two of you in a space in the next day or two. And I don't think Charles is running from any discussion. He just may have not been available.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I can open up a space if you're ready to close down. And who knows? Maybe Chuck will be in later. Who knows?
I'll check in later on.
Or just probably just leave the space alone, right? You can just leave, right?
I could just leave and leave the space. Yeah, I actually suggested that if you guys want to.
I can't add anyone. It's not letting me add.
But you're a co-host.
Yeah, I still can't do it because.
Okay, let's see what happens when I'll shift to listener, and then see if you can do it.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. That will close the space.
Okay.
That'll end the space. You have to stay on as co-host, or the space will close.
Yeah, I have a pretty good.
It's not like Clubhouse where you can hand it off. It doesn't work like that, sadly.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I can just leave it on, and
but we can shut it down. Why don't we shut it down?
We'll shut it down. All right, shut it down.
And then because if you end up falling asleep, then your space will be running for hours, and people will come in and say, "What the hell?" So yeah, that's.
Yeah, just when I was getting warmed up here, and I was going to ask a very important question. You guys going to leave? No.
Okay, well, you can ask. What in the fuck is going on with this Nick Adams guy? Someone put that in the. Someone put that in the jumbotron.
He's a troll.
I mean, I find it hilarious, but it's just totally ridiculous.
He's not even a real person, is he?
I think he is.
There were people trolling on his behalf like 8 months ago coming in. Yeah, just ridiculous people, absolute morons. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's always been a grifter. I blocked him.
He does these things that I know he's trying to get a rise out of. Like, no cap, nature just hits different when you're having a foursome with the boys. There was one thing where I remember he did these like football tweets. I mean, I follow him for what it's worth. I mean, it's just absurd. He did these football tweets where he was like, you know, I could only imagine Travis Kelce participating in a foursome with the boys with his strong 9-iron. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, man, please. I think he's doing that so that liberals would be like, you're gay. You're gay. You're just gay. I don't know. It's pretty funny. Okay. Well, hold on. Alpha male. There's an alpha male among us.
No, yeah, he's a troll. He's 100% a troll.
Wow.
He's just a
Quaking,
troll.
he
Quaking his
started
off.
off kind of as like a, like a kind of a Trump, like syndicate. Like he would just be like tweeting about Trump, but now he's just a troll. He has like a fan base.
He has 500,000 followers.
No, yeah, he's actually pretty funny. His trolling is.
He did another one that was funny
notch.
when he was like, well, he has an Australian. He's from Australia. He's like, all right, we are boycotting the A&W root beer. So what I want you to do is to go to the store, purchase A&W root beer, and then film yourself pouring it down the toilet. So I'm like, that's I'm not sure how successful of a boycott that's going to be, but it's just pretty funny.
Yeah, he's funny.
Anyway, okay, guys. I will.
Ready for my question, guys? Ready for my question? It's probably going to keep you up all night.
Okay. Okay. Quick.
Okay. So I've actually been more like a human rights activist, advocated causes that have to do with my ethnicity, whether it be Arabs or Libyan or something like that. But when you live in America for a long time, you develop a sense of balance, and I have tremendous number of Jews that work for me or lawyers or something like that. But in the last month and a half, I've been just so pissed off and just saying, I want to know what the heck is going on. Is it religion that's saying kill, uproot, kill babies, cut trees down, that maybe Biden is subscribing to and some of the European leaders? Or is it really this trend that the Israeli lobby all over the world and all these places? So I just I'm struggling with that, Anybody have any?
I mean, I think there's this profound myth among Biden's generation. I mean, in his defense, in a weird way, it's just very difficult for someone like that to think differently. I mean, they have grown up with the myth of the Second World War and the Holocaust and the founding of Israel, etc. But there's also no doubt that the AIPAC lobby is just extremely powerful. I mean, there is this thing floating around. They're going to spend $100 million to get rid of the squad. And that's even pretty bold, because I would say that for your average American, they don't even really know that the squad is like kind of sort of anti-Zionist or pro-Palestinian or something. They just know them as like youngish brown ladies, who do socialism or something. They don't even, so going after them is actually pretty aggressive in this day and age. But yeah, it's extremely powerful, and Biden has been consistent, and he's rationalized it. I mean, there's this famous thing going around of Biden saying, I don't apologize for the state of Israel. We benefit from Israel. If Israel didn't exist, we'd be forced to invent it, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a long-term thing. I think it's just too much for him to change, and we've just avoided the Israel issue. And Biden has been seemingly anti-Bibi. I mean, he didn't meet with Bibi Netanyahu in, I think it was like September before the October 7th attack. And they're obviously much more sympathetic towards the Zionist left. But it's just all of that is water under the bridge at this point. It just doesn't matter. They're all in. They're all bought in. And do I support a humanitarian pause or whatever? It's like, okay, sure. Babies are being bombed, but it's just kind of meaningless. Like they're the horse is out of the barn. They made their choice, and he could have strongly told Israel not to do this, or rejected it, or say this is not the right way to respond to this vicious attack. I mean, there were like plausible ways he could have gone. He didn't. So it's like he's all in and whining about civilian casualties now when everyone saw this coming.
Yeah,
I just don't have a lot of sympathy, to be honest.
I saw a clip of Biden. He looked like he was in his either late 40s or early 50s last night. For some reason, I was surfing the channels, and he was strongly advocating the abolishment of apartheid in South Africa. I mean, I've seen him be so pro human rights that right now seeing him do this, the thing that concerns me the most really about all of this is that we're pulled by the nose for something that could possibly bring upon us another 9/11. It's not completely, totally out of the question. The scenarios that were going on in the late 90s, folks, the late 90s and early 2000 were very, very similar. Israel pushed for war against the Iraqis because they said Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, continued to push until yesterday or whatever for knocking the Iranians out of their wits. So now we see all of this and say, wait a second, this is going to culminate into something that's going to hurt and mess up our own national security interests. So how do we balance this? What I'm beginning to think is that the Israeli lobby has such a chokehold on our policy and decision making at all levels that we can't even breathe. We're just following the Zionist designs of having a state and not allowing the Palestinians to have a homeland. It's like I have some very good friends, that are not Jews or just capable, smart people. They say, Omar, you lost your balance. We know you're a very balanced guy. How can you lose your balance? Look what the Hamas did. And look, I said, listen, right now, yes, I lost my balance because I'm worried about America, and I'm also thinking this is not fair. This just doesn't make sense. He says, you guys in the Arab world should absorb these Palestinians. And when I told him, listen, man, the Palestinians have the right to have a homeland. We can't tell them.
Uh-oh. Did he pop out there?
Huh?
No, I can hear him. I can hear him. Richard,
sorry. Maybe I
Wi-Fi?
popped out.
Are you on Wi-Fi or cell data?
It's weird. I'm on my phone, but it's occasionally on Wi-Fi and then cell. It's like the Wi-Fi goes out periodically, but then this picks it up. There's something going on right now because I actually did a call today, and it was fine the whole way through. So who knows?
Richard, I think
at a certain point, Richard, I think that it may not necessarily be a glitch. It could be intentional. There are a lot of people that certainly dislike you and you hosting spaces. I mean, I think it's outrageous, but there are DDoS attacks, and my space has been hit numerous times in the last couple of weeks where my phone battery, even with it plugged in, keeps going down and it overheats. And I have to restart my phone.
Really?
And if you do that, and if you restart your phone with a bad connection of the space, it's possible you'll lose it. And
what do you think? There's interference from some hands into it?
Yeah, I mean there are lots of people on here, maybe activists, maybe agents, whatever, operatives that have capability. And I get 30 listening bots in at a time. It says on the bottom, other listener. And
let me support that and give you absolutely hard evidence. Okay.
It's also possible. It's also possible you have a shitty Android. That could also be it.
No, I have a new iPhone.
You're really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do quite a bit. I do quite a bit of LinkedIn posts, right? And
Richard,
for the life of me, for 3 weeks, every post I put up that actually advocates the right thing and that I believe in, it says you have to wait for 14 days. I was getting really annoyed at that.
What?
And I've seen actually.
You have to wait for 14 days.
He's been suspended. You've been suspended for 2 weeks.
No, not suspended, but they say we're going to review your post and we'll let you know in 14 days. Oh my God! So I found a way around it. Actually, going to groups that I like, and I'm able to post and do stuff like that. There was a guy by the name of Gian Levy, who's a very famous, awesome Israeli journalist that actually came over to AIPAC recently and spoke and said, you AIPAC are destroying Israel. I swear to God, that's what he said. You are destroying Israel. And guess what? That whole speech just went viral and everybody listened to it. Guess what? It's out of YouTube. It's not there anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So
how did he get away with that?
Well, because
he was invited to speak at AIPAC?
Because you know what? I don't have any problem with Jews. They're Jews, Arabs, and he's a Jewish guy that loves Jewish land, but he does not want the Zionism that's actually destroying Israel. I think what Israel has done in the past 6 weeks has actually hurt it so huge, because social media, the whole entire world, well over, I don't know if you're watching this, I would say in the millions, I wouldn't hesitate to say close to 100 million people rioted all over the globe. You know, it's a huge number. The whole entire world sees what they're doing, and it's not, I mean, that's not going to help its cause. What are they thinking doing this? You think they're going to actually turn around and say, hey, you know, I think we're going to come back and do some peace talks and give the Palestinians a homeland? They're not going to do that. They've created more enemies all over the world than ever before. So it's sad, you know? So, you know, the interesting thing that I see, someone who comes from that region, that when you see Netanyahu speak and when you see the Israelis speak, they're aliens to that world. Aliens in the sense, in the true sense, that they're Europeans. They don't understand the culture there. They think that if we kill so many Palestinians, and they're going to actually go to Egypt and they're going to disappear, and that's just not what's happening. That's just not going to be the case, you know? So it's a sad reality. It's going to keep going for a while, and we're going to actually suffer from it in the United States and in that region too. So, yeah. So anyways, that's what I have to say.
Most Israelis are not Ashkenazi, though.
All right, guys. I am going to call it quits, and I will talk to everyone soon, and I might check out Zag's space later on before I go to sleep. All right. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to being with you again, guys. Follow me if you don't mind. Now, will you follow me? Thank you very much.
I'll follow you.
Thanks, Richard.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.